I would like to get some kind of an abatement on my bill, seeing that it's empty.
Yeah, can you fill us in, Peter, with the details of the
Sure.
price
So-
and
So Mrs.
timings involved?
Yeah, Mrs. Haru's been on sewer for quite some time now.
Since they started it, we couldn't even rehab the house until we signed up for it. Yes, it was like, 25 years ago? Or
Probably
23 years, about that,
2002,
23 years ago.
2003.
Yeah.
She's been a flat rate customer ever since. She has not installed a meter, so that's part of the problem, is she's getting billed for a four-bedroom home when it's been sitting vacant for.
I left on December 16th.
So much like the other camps that have had these issues around the lake, where they'd close the cottage down or the camp down for the summer and come in and they'd probably asked you for abatements in the past because it was empty. I think what was always done was they were informed they should probably go to a meter, so they were just billed on true usage instead of flat rate. So Mrs. Haru's here. I'm unaware of any time that you've given an abatement based on a home being vacant. So I told Mrs. Haru that if she wanted to come in front of the commission, she could talk to you and see what your thoughts were on that, and see if you've done anything different in the past that I might not know about.
Essentially 2 quarterly bills is what we're looking at here.
Well, no, it would just
I have the whole bill right in front of me.
be one, because if she said she vacated the premises in
September
December,
December
or
16th.
December. I think
so it'd
it's
just be the
September, yeah.
last quarter, I think is what
The
your
very last
request would be.
quarter, everything's always been paid. I've never skipped a bill.
Well, Mr. Lemansky, you live in the lake, you may have
He lives right across the lake
something
from
to
me.
offer us.
Yeah, and I think it was a year before sewer came in, I had to put a new septic system in, so I'm not connected. But this is what I do recall. We did have a policy for people who would leave for the winter, and it leaves me what the policy was. I don't know if we just charged the administration fee, and that was it?
Well, that'd be for a metered customer.
Okay, and what do we have for non-metered?
I don't believe you have one.
We don't have one.
I believe it was always said to go to a meter, so you get charged on what your actual usage. So if you close it down, then all you have is your $30 administration fee, like you said, for the meter,
Right,
for the bill.
right.
And we have no way of knowing if it was been totally closed down, or if somebody came in for a week, something like that, and used the sewer, so it's kind of a
Well,
difficult.
you can call my realtor, she'd verify it, that's
Yeah,
for
I-
sure.
Right,
I've been living at my daughter's, so.
it's more so not the fact that we don't trust what you're saying, it's the fact that if the commission does some type of abatement for this, it opens the doors for other people to possibly come in after and take advantage of it, where they can say, we've left in September, it's been closed, and they continue to use it for the next couple of months, and they actually have usage, and the commission has no idea, because there's no meter on the house. Because there's no way to know how much you could have, or how much someone could use it after they say they've been gone.
Well, I have many neighbors, I could probably verify the
No,
fact that I
and-
left, but,
Again, it's
Yeah.
more so the fact that once the precedent is set, it opens the door for other people to take advantage of it, not that you have or you would.
and I am not.
So if in fact Mrs. Haru was a metered customer, what would happen is we'd go in and remove the meter?
No,
Is-
Would at least show 0 usage.
we would read it, it would show minimum usage, so she would just get charged a $30
Yeah, the minimum.
base fee.
Okay.
And moving forward, like the regulations state that when the property changes ownership, they have to install a meter, so that's not gonna help Mrs. Haru moving forward. It's
Yeah.
just, if you want to consider doing some type of abatement now, seeing it's been empty for the last 3 or 4 months.
Right. So you've been paying for the last 18 years?
No, more like 20-something years, when they first
it
put
been
it
that
in.
long?
Yeah, they were still digging it
Really?
up
Yeah.
when I was working on the house.
Okay, and your quarterly charge is $305?
Correct. I
So
have the
that's-
bill right in
that's-
front of me.
That's $1,220 a year?
Mhm.
Yeah. I'd like to make a motion that we abate this bill 1 quarter.
I'll second the motion for discussion.
And if I would like to add to is that we abated for 1 quarter, including the administration fee. just as
There's
if-
no administration fee on flat rate.
but if in fact, the whole, if this property was on a meter, they'd have to pay the administration fee.
Correct, but it's
Correct.
not. It's just per bedroom.
I understand that.
Okay.
That's why, again, this is certainly a unusual situation. And again, we've got a regular customer who's been here for years and years and years and years, and is ready to sign out of the property. And I certainly believe what she's saying. She hasn't, you know, the property hasn't been used in that period of time. And I mean, based on, you know, $25,000 worth of payment, I think that $305 abatement isn't gonna kill us,
So,
less
Ju-
than $30.
just to clarify, the bill that is in your hand now is for October, November, December.
I'll let you look at it and,
No, I'm just, because it was,
Right. Because they're
So-
prepaid.
yeah, you,
no, you pay after. That bill was due.
No, it's-
You're looking to do the
period is
abatement for,
October, November, and December.
right.
you're looking to abate the next bill, which will come out,
Absolutely,
which will be
yes.
January, February, March.
Correct.
Of 2019.
Well, except December should be abated because I left on December 16th.
No, we're not gonna split hairs. I think my motion is that we abate for 1 quarter.
Which that would be January, February, March of 2019.
Right.
So that means you're gonna have to pay that bill, and the abatement will show up for your next bill that will come for the past 3 months, January, February, and March.
And when will I receive that one? Because
The
this
end of
one's not,
March.
About the
oh,
first
this
of-
one was due
You
March
won't
7th.
receive that one probably till March, we'll read in the
First of
beginning of
May.
April, probably the beginning of May.
And it'll probably be sold by then, so,
Understood, but you're still gonna owe those funds.
no, because I know what they do, they've already did it when the first buyer backed out, it was on the paperwork that they would have to pay that up front.
Okay.
And that's how.
Right, your attorney will be able to do the
Correct, it was,
balance.
I already seen the paperwork the
Yeah,
first time
yeah.
go around, that
So
didn't happen.
okay, so the motion is, and if the motion passes, we'll just draft the abatement for you to vote. If it, again, pass the motion today, we'll present the abatement formally at our next meeting, so you can sign the paperwork. Right?
It'll just be a matter of signing the paperwork next meeting. Fine.
And so as not to set a precedent, we will accept, you know, we'll review these on an individual basis as they come up. Hopefully, no more will come up, but if they do, we'll
Yeah, I
have
hope
to give
not
the same
too, I hope the
consideration
sale
we're
goes
giving you,
through, trust me.
you know, so.
All right, so this bill will have to be paid, but the next one's gonna be
Correct, we'll show zero.
demolished, which
Actually,
is,
we
is
won't,
gonna be demolished probably anyway because of a new owner, but,
we won't do that abatement, Sue, until after we actually do the billing, correct? Because it's not billed yet, we can't abate something we haven't billed.
Oh, right, so it won't
So
be
if this
until after
passes, this won't come in front of you for signature until after we do our billing for that quarter,
But couldn't
Okay.
we-
because there is no bill existing at this time.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to get ahead of us here,
Mhm.
but are you saying the new owner's gonna tear down your property?
I did not say that.
Oh, okay, I thought you were.
I
planning-
said that they would take it over, hopefully
Okay,
by then
okay.
anyway, and then it'll
Okay,
all come
sorry.
into the paperwork when they call in for the
Yeah,
taxes,
okay.
no liens, you know what they do.
Sure, sure.
So, Bob, I know you very well, so, so you know what happens, you see the paperwork and they say, this is what your fee's gonna
Right, right,
be.
exactly.
And it
Yep.
gets prepaid, they
Right.
have to prepaid at that time.
So what we'll do is
Correct.
we'll, and as far as the office goes,
Can't we do it, and it'll be just a credit on that too, and then we'll just write off? Like we did
You
with
need-
the gentleman that had like the large abatement.
we haven't billed it yet, so I don't know how you can abate a bill that hasn't been done yet. I think when they come to do the CML, we can reference the motion that's been made, give everyone the information that it's gonna be a $0 bill because it's been abated.
Because it's been vacant, correct, even with the new owners come in, I don't want them having to pay for something that wasn't used.
Yep.
So,
We should-
When the lawyer does a CML, would they have to contact our department as opposed to the tax collector's department to know what we're agreeing to tonight?
Yes, the most realtors or attorneys, when they close,
Mhm.
always call us for a final read, which we don't
Correct.
do. So they go ahead and call the tax collectors, and we work with all the parties as the sales take place, so.
Okay.
We'll just make sure this information is ready, it'll be attached to the property, and we can just hand it, we can just mention it to them when we get those phone calls.
Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much.
you.
Good evening.
Peter, just for clarification, I always thought that if you were on, not meter, but if you were on the EDU method,
Mhm.
that you prepaid.
I think you're quite right about that. The money she's paying is for what's
The
coming up
invoice-
in the future. Whereas the metered one, you have to read it and then you pay, so that
So
one's
it's
paid
postpaid.
afterwards. And there was always that difference between the
Right.
two, and I totally agree with Rob on that.
Well, the invoice referenced October, November, December,
Yeah, that,
so that would be what the bill was for.
But, it may represent that, but it may be an error on the billing people to make that assumption that it's for the past quarter.
I'll look into it,
okay.
that's the way
I-
it's been, and it maybe, I don't know when it could have changed or how it changed, but
Steve used to have a pretty good handle on that, because, again, it depends on whether it was a metered or whether it was someone who was on the EDU method, because I thought the EDU was prepaid. And you recall the same,
exactly, yeah.
yeah.
okay.
That's come up before us many times.
Yeah.
Okay, next up we have 44 Worcester Road, and Ed Cockling is here, gonna come up and enlighten us a little bit more.
I'm Ed Gosling on 47 Hanson Road, and I'm just here to follow up on the discussion that I started at the last meeting regarding L. Turner Road, and just pointing out to the board and the commission that there seemed to be a conflict with the proposed Exxon Mobil water main going up that driveway road, because there seems to be a conundrum there, whether it is a public road or it's a driveway. The other items that I brought up was, moving hydrants back from that plan so that they wouldn't get hit by plows or cars along the way, as well as the proposed subdivision that it was denied the other night, but I'm sure that's not over yet. So there was some water services that were part of that project. And again, I wanted to bring that to your attention because it's obviously, we don't want anybody really digging into the new pavement, depending when that comes. So I'm hoping that the developer does come to you if they do get approval in advance, so that that's not an issue. That project's calling for sewer laterals, two 6-inch sewer laterals, two 2-inch water mains, or water services, and a 6-inch water main. And I know from speaking at the last meeting that they haven't come before you, and so they're not really even sure if, you can meet their needs, but I guess I'm just trying to be a little proactive. Cutting into new pavement is never good.
Well, if I might,
Sure.
through the chair, I think there's town policies in place where on a new road, new paved road, you can't even cut that road for 5 years.
Okay.
So,
So
a lot of times you fall into that, if you snooze, you lose. And if you don't have your ducks in a row, then, I mean,
Well, I realize there is a moratorium, and the one thing I would question is that if that is actually legal. I was under the impression that you can't put a 5-year moratorium on a road, but you can put conditions on a road. So if you cut into it, for example, in the city of Worcester, they have specific conditions. If you cut into new pavement that's less than one, you have to file a hardship letter. And when you do the work, you actually have to use flowable fill instead of gravel. You have to do an infrared patch. If it's just a single trench, if it's multiple trenches, you have to do a grind and overlay. Again, we want to spur development in town too, and just because the road got paved. I guess what I'm trying to say is just to be proactive, trying to head it off so that it's better for everybody.
and I believe you're correct on that. And that's Jerry and the Highway Department
I see.
with the policies on that, so they wouldn't really fall
Yeah.
on this board.
Rob had suggested last week that you check with the town clerk to see if this is indeed a accepted town road or not. I did a little work myself, but not much. I found that the town does plow it. But then I have a map, my own map, of the town of Charlton, and it's not listed on it. So I know you had said back in 1937 it was listed. Did you ever get to the bottom of this yourself, so
So,
for sure we can say what it is, or maybe it doesn't matter since Mobile proposed the pipe up it, but
well, here's the issue with Mobile, and again, this is my take on it. If Mobile proposed to pipe up that road and it's a driveway, for example, then we would have public infrastructure on a private road or drive, which is not a good thing because you don't have rights there. So you would, my advice to the commission would be to get an easement from them to do that. So that way, you know, you can maintain it. Because obviously, it's I think it calls for a 4-inch water main with a hydrant on the end of it. From time to time, you would wanna use that to flush, you know, you don't want the stagnant water and everything. But you wanna make sure that if we're putting that infrastructure in, the town has control of it. So, as far as it being a public road, at the last, planning board meeting, 2 attorneys, at the meeting, one for the planning board and one for the developer, claimed that, it was not a public road. However, the town really needs to get to the bottom of that on their own. I'm not really familiar with that process. I think it's a little bit, you know, entailed. I mean, I don't know if you've heard anything, Pete? Have you?
Yeah,
Yep.
so I spent some time with the town clerk and the interim town planner. And L Turner Road shows up on the official town map, which is the zoning map. And they call that the official town map, and it has all the roads on that we receive Chapter 90 reimbursement from the state. I know in the past, Jerry Foskett's done a lot of work to try and determine if that is a town road or not. And all the work that he has uncovered determines it is a town road, otherwise he wouldn't plow it for no reason. So as far as the town goes, it's treated as a town road. So my recommendation is that we let ExxonMobil know that might be a little bit of confusion there. The plans are done. We're not there yet. That portion of line has not been installed. When I was at the planning board meeting last week, the Attorney Bobrowski and the attorney for VGG both stated that they believe it's a private driveway. So until they can come up with some documentation to prove that, I think it's best that we stay under the premonition that the town clerk, the highway department, and again, the town planner with the official map shows it as a town road.
how long of it is, I mean, we receive money by the length, I assume, by the
Yes.
foot. How many feet do
I don't
they?
recall if it was 410 feet or 710 feet. It might be 700. But it's on, so the town clerk has a list of all the roads and their lengths that gets submitted to the state for the Chapter 90 funding, and it's been on there for quite some time. And I believe Jerry's done a lot of work in the past with Darlene Tully, who's a previous town clerk, to try and determine if there was ever a town meeting warrant article to discontinue that as a public roadway, and they could not find it. So that's why they're under the assumption that it must have been accepted as one of the mass approvals of roadways becoming a public way, probably way back in the 40s or 50s, when there was just groups of roads that were accepted before zoning, before all this stuff that came into effect. So it's still up in the air. At the planning board meeting, I asked the planning board chair to get us some concrete documentation that shows that road's been discontinued or it was never accepted. Because I think all the information that we have shows it as a town road, and I don't think I wouldn't recommend we go against that at this time until we get some concrete information from someone, or until the highway and the town clerk get some information where they say, okay, we missed it, here it is, and it's no longer a town road. And if we get that information, then we can talk to ExxonMobil and say, look, this is actually a driveway. We can adjust what type of design, what type of connection and what type of water line they have designed to go up it, and make the changes at that time. Unless the board feels differently, that's kind of where I ended up with it.
No, I'd say if the highway department who governs the roads states that it's a public road, it's a public road. I mean, and if the town clerk agrees with that, like you said, show us backup documentation that proves that it isn't.
Okay.
Short of that, close down Route 20. I don't think it's a public road. I mean, can't just do that.
Right.
So show some proof.
You know, I think we could continue to beat this, but I'm a little surprised that with the firepower that was at the planning board meeting last week, that they didn't come up with a definite answer on this. But in the state of Massachusetts, roads can be one of three things. Is a public road that's been approved by town meeting, a road that's gone through subdivision control, and it's been recorded that way, and, which no one seems to be talking about, at least with the people that you were with last week, is a way in existence. And this is, I see this as a way in existence, and we have quite a few of them in our town. And it's a way in existence, if the planning board recognizes it, you can do a Form A lot off a way in existence. It doesn't have to be a public road. So, I'm surprised that that's where this has come up. I think it's chapter 41, section 81, I think it's either M or L or whatever, as far as the description of when you're filing a Form A lot, it's gotta be one of the three. And this is where all of the arguments have come in the past, is someone saying, no, it's a way in existence, and I'm able to subdivide out a lot. And the arguments have been saying, well, you know, it wasn't at town meeting, or it didn't go through subdivision. It doesn't have to. But if it was, and don't forget, Ulster Road is Route 20. Go back in 2010, 2020. All right, so I mean, they didn't have these fancy labels for everything. It wasn't until subdivision law came in to where they then tried to define everything. But I mean, you go to Nantucket and talk about ways in existence, those people have been fighting for years and years and years. Because, I mean, it was almost as if you could get a lot down in Nantucket out of a cereal box, because it was, and how I know this is my wife's relatives had owned one, and they ended up getting a letter to where someone was trying to put 6 of them together to make a house lot. So, they know the rule down there real well. So, again, Eltrona Road, I think is, as far as I go, I'm not speaking for the board, I mean, that's a road that water pipe is gonna go up, and I agree with ExxonMobil that it's only to service the couple houses that are there, and it should be a 4-inch. And if someone wants to change it, who has an interest in it, then let them step up and let them pay the differential. And that's gonna be between them and ExxonMobil, not between us. We just approved the plan, that's all. That's my opinion, for what it's worth, so.
What's up, Alex?
Good evening, Alex.
Alex?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, so I guess what I'm hearing here is that basically, as far as the road is concerned, at this point in time, it's on the official map, and that will be governed by the highway department.
The official town map is
Right.
through the planning board as the
Oh.
zoning map.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay.
Highway treats it as a chapter 90 road for
I
reimbursement.
see,
And they also maintain it and plow it, and they have for years.
I see. Oh, so it is the official, there is an official town map, and it's governed by the planning board.
Again,
Okay.
in talking to the previous planner, Alan Gordon, and talking to Bill Scanlon, and talking to Kurt Meskis, the zoning enforcement officer, they reference the zoning map as the official town map, and if the road is on there, they reference it as an official town road.
Oh, okay.
And, again, there's private roads on there, there's, public roads, and the differential is we don't get chapter 90 reimbursement for the private roads. So many of the lake roads, say Glen Echo, South Charlton, those small private roads, we don't get chapter 90 reimbursement for.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, thank you very much, and thanks
Well,
for.
then again, you also,
You know,
so Mr. Cotton also raised some other issues with the hydrants that are referenced on on VGG subdivision plan. As far as that goes, I would just recommend that we wait until the plan is approved. At that time, they can work with ExxonMobil, if it does get approved, to delineate where the hydrants and where the connections should be placed so that it works with the current ExxonMobil water line that's designed to be installed. It's hard to make changes to ExxonMobil's water line design when there's nothing approved, and there's no need to make changes for something that might not get approved, so.
I guess my only point to that is you can probably relatively easily move that hydrant right now on the plan that it is gonna end up in the middle of their driveway. So you,
So that plan also shows that hydrant going, just dead ending in the road that doesn't connect to a water line that isn't there, so. We haven't approved any of those plans, the subdivision plan, any of those connections at this time, so,
no, you have approved the Exxon Mobil plan, correct?
yes.
Okay, so if you look at the location of the proposed subdivision, the
That-
Exxon Mobil plan is showing the hydrant right
Yep.
smack in the middle of their proposed driveway. And what I'm
Yep.
pointing out is that way to, you know, just get away from any conundrum or problem is if you were to take that hydrant actually and move it down the road, you know, 50 feet, 60 feet, you wouldn't
Yeah.
have that issue at all. It would be a you know, a moot point, that's all.
I'd rather not make any changes for a subdivision that's not approved.
Okay.
And for a subdivision that we've been told if it does get approved, isn't gonna get built. So to have ExxonMobil make changes and move a hydrant that affects the fire department, and again, not that 50 or 60 feet is a big deal, but when you mention it to the fire department, it's instead of 400 or whatever feet, it's 500 one way, 300 the other. I just recommend, and again, I'd ask that until it's done, we can let ExxonMobil know that there's a possibility of a subdivision plan getting approved. At this time, it's not. Luckily, they're probably not gonna be in front of that property for another 3 months, 4 months. And we can, if they get there before then, and this is still somewhat viable, we can discuss it at that time and talk about moving that hydrant as a field change, unless the board objects and wants to
This
do
is
something
only a
different.
4-inch line?
It'll be a 6-inch.
Oh, okay, the
For a hydrant.
a hydrant on a 4-inch
Anchor
line
T.
was my question. I thought that's what I'd heard, a 4-inch line only.
No, the 4-inch line is going up their road. There's a 4-inch line going up L Turner Road, which my guess would be that they designed that in case they subdivide that road all the way up into various
Additional
lots.
residents, and there'd be plenty of water.
Hmm.
Right, right. If the board doesn't mind, Ed, I'm just curious, this morning's article, what did it mean when the land court threw out whatever they threw out?
I believe, and I'm not an expert at this, I believe, what was going on in town is we have a zoning bylaw, and then we had another, a regular, bylaw, and they can't, address the same thing. So I think what the judge decided is that if you wanna change the marijuana law that's currently in town, you can't have two different laws for the same thing.
Conflicting with each other?
Right, so
Okay.
I guess what his ruling was, that if the town wishes to change the marijuana law, they have to go back and have a vote and change the zoning. You can't create an additional bylaw that.
Can't
that-
change the zoning bylaw with the general bylaw.
Yes,
So the general bylaw is in effect, which pretty much reduced any marijuana facilities, whether it's retail, production, growth, to IG zones. The second bylaw, the general bylaw that passed, said no marijuana facilities in town whatsoever. So as you know, a zoning bylaw is 2/3 vote to pass. A general bylaw is just simple majority.
And so that was
So-
passed in August?
Yeah, I believe
Yes.
both,
Yeah.
I believe
Yep.
both bylaws were passed at the same meeting.
yes, correct.
And that, so the Attorney General approved the zoning bylaw,
Right.
and because VGG took this to land court to clarify, because I believe it's tried to been done in the past, where the other towns have tried to use a general bylaw to supersede a zoning bylaw, and it just can't be done that way.
Got it. I think. Thanks, Ed.
Okay, thank you
So the
guys.
la-
Thanks.
So
Lori.
that's the hydrants, and the last thing was the new pavement, just so we
Yeah.
can formally
Yeah.
address everything that was brought up in open forum at the last meeting. And as you mentioned, Mr. Jennings, the new pavement and that, I think if VGG is gonna move forward before we get there, then they can meet with ExxonMobil, and then they'll meet with this board, and they can talk about what they need and what they present for needs, and determine how those connections are gonna be left. And that will all be put into the design and installed before the road is paved. If they're not done by that time, even though the water line is installed this time, hopefully this year, the final pavement won't be done till the following year. So it has a season to settle. And if they can figure out what they want to do before then they can come in front of this board and make the request. Unfortunately, they've been in front of us to
They're also-
talk about their project kind of
Yeah, no, I
conceptually.
was here for that, yes.
And we
yeah.
just haven't had any formal requests to try and identify what is what at this time. So to do a lot of work for something that we don't know what's gonna happen, it doesn't make a lot of sense to go in and making a lot of changes. If they get it in
agree.
beforehand, great. They know the time constraints. They've been told if they can't make it happen before then it's gonna be on them to figure out how to do it after.
I agree, that
Okay.
sounds logical.
They actually have to talk to ExxonMobil about the change.
Yes.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but pavement is not through you, on your, with you guys?
No,
that
that's
would-
through the road opening permit and the highway
that-
department,
And that would be the highway department,
That'd be
oh,
the-
perfect,
the-
okay,
DPW superintendent.
I see, very good.
So, yeah, so he issues the road opening permit, and that also regulates what gets done after the project's done as far as paving curb to curb and all that.
And so, for example, these are pretty big projects that they're proposing, and I'm not sure if they're gonna go forward or not, but let's say they were to go forward. Would that be something that the planning board would put a bond on the road? Because if it's
They
new
could.
pavement, it would be the planning board then, okay.
As far as
Just
the
wanna bring that
condition.
up to them, right, cause it would make sense if the town, we had a brand new road, and then all of a sudden you have thousands of big trucks on it, it's not gonna hold up too well, and we wanna make sure that we're left with something good. Okay,
I think that was all your concerns, correct?
that's it, yeah, just topics, they're not major
No,
concerns. just,
understood.
Just,
That's-
just a good, solid conversation about the town infrastructure.
right.
Fantastic, guys,
Thank you.
take care.
That's it.
Have a good night.
Okay, next up, we got
So-
Phillips property on Gale Road.
So yes, Mr. Chair, I had these two items on here to talk about after we come out of executive session. In speaking with town council and the IG's office, I might have jumped the gun a little bit. I need a little more information for the Phillips property before you make this determination and take the vote. So I'd just like to put both of these, new business items 2 and 3 off for a little bit of time until after Mr. Newton's out there and does some more exploration and determines what portion of Mr. Phillips' property we're actually gonna be looking to purchase and get a final price. So we will not need to discuss it now, and I guess as I wrote, for executive session, we will not need to come out of executive session to discuss these items. We'll come out of executive session for the sole purpose of adjournment, just to be clear. So if you wanna move forward to old business, we can talk about the FY 2020 budget for water and sewer. I got proposed budgets from the town accountant, or the finance director for you to review and consider.
Peter, who's the finance director?
Donna?
Oh,
Folio?
okay, so she's the town accountant.
We don't have, she's the finance director.
Oh, that's what's her name? Oh, that's her
That's the
heading.
title, yes,
Thank you.
yes. They changed that a little bit when they combined treasurer collector and then got a finance director. So again, so if we start with water, the main thing we did between both budgets was we took all of the cost for all three positions, salaries and expenses, and Donna added them together and split it evenly between water and sewer. Because both, Sue, Steve, and I are all doing work for both, water and sewer. Previously, because ExxonMobil had that account that was paying for my position, she was keeping my position separate in water, and we paid Sue and Steve out of sewer. You can look and see from FY 18 to FY 19, it's not a huge, a big change, I guess. For water, it is a little bit for the related expenses. So the first budget in here is sewer. So we can, if on your packet, was that the first in order? It goes to sewers first?
Mm-hmm.
So you'll see the commissioner's stipend, that she cut that in half between both.
So you're on sewer.
We're on sewer, yeah, sorry. So you'll see sewer salaries, sewer-related expenses, sewer payroll-related expenses, and then if you go down below to sewer expenses, those are all pretty much level funded. There's been no changes from 2018 to 2019, except for a change in the indirect expenses. It actually got reduced. As we reduce our budget, because indirect expenses lag a year, those will continue to decrease. So as our sewer debt goes away and our budget will somewhat be cut in half, approximately half, our indirect expenses will continue to decrease because the town hall personnel won't have to deal with the betterment payments and all that stuff in theory, so, those should change, so. And if you look down the bottom, it shows the revenues, where we're collecting revenues to go ahead and offset our total budget.
If I may, Chairman, you do, now, somewhere in here, I saw they had the formula for the indirect.
Should be the page right after.
Right,
Is, so you have the budget, the page right after it is your indirect cost,
Yep,
and then the next page is the OPEB funding plan.
and just, what's the acronym OPEB stand for?
Other post-employment benefits.
Other post-employment, so these people are retired?
Well, you're planning ahead for when we retire. We don't have any retirees at this time.
Okay,
You're planning ahead for the, I guess possibly the 50% insurance match that you have to do for retirees, that you still have to pay.
I mean, the benefit that's been given to former workers?
Mhm.
Yep,
So no, we do not have any retirees at this time. I don't believe. But this is to plan ahead for when we do, based on employees that we currently have.
okay, and I'm looking for the methodology, oh, I see it now, indirect costs on the second page. Now, maybe the problem is I've been here too long, but this methodology is different than it was 5 years ago.
Correct. But it's the same that was used last year.
Okay, but it's not the same as it was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 12 years ago.
Well, you never paid indirect costs that
Yeah, we
long
did.
ago. You did?
We did, yeah, I've got the budget from 2014 right here. Indirect costs, $49,799.
Okay.
We paid indirect costs. And back then, it was based on a formula that was relative to our debt, is how they did that. So,
Again, I know the finance director came in front of you last year to talk about this, and I believe that what she uses is what's currently approved from the DOR. I don't believe she kind of came up with this on her own.
I'm not saying that, I'm not
She used,
implying that, but I'm just.
she used what she can substantiate and what she has that the DOR approves of.
Yeah, I'm
So-
just, I guess, simply my point is how we used to do it is no longer how we do it. And if we were to do it the way we used to do it, our indirect cost would, because our debt is next to zero now,
Mhm.
our indirect cost would be minimal. So I think those who have the ability to make the change said, geez, we can't let that happen, so why don't we, in my mind, okay, is why don't we make a change and so that we can keep that number up there? And,
Again, it's reduced from last year. The methodology is consistent with last year. I think as our debt goes away, as they continue to use this methodology, our indirect costs will continue to decrease because it'll be based on what our operating expenses are only. And it's just, again, just our daily operations, we require assistance from staff at the town hall on a weekly basis, whether it be for payroll.
Peter, I'm not, by all means, we definitely depend on different personnel up here, but I'm always coming from the point of view is, you know, can we be paying less, or should we be paying less? So this, getting back to this contribution that we make, so, for instance, for sewer, it's listed at $5,513. And What's it listed for under water?
The same?
No, 10,100.
Why is that different?
You have $10,103.
Because this is from last year. This is based on salaries from last year. It's
So-
not based on this year.
Okay.
So last year's salary was, my position was completely out of
Oh, Yep.
water. And just Sue and Steve were out of sewer.
Okay, and just to be fair, okay, in past years, it would, the OPEB was referred to as pension. Pension? Because it was a line item years ago, and it would have been, this line item was for $10,720.
For water sewer or for the town?
For the it was the water sewer budget for the town. So it's not, this isn't new, it's just described differently,
Okay.
that's all.
moving forward next year, it should be split evenly.
Yes, because it will reference this budget.
And the other thing, Peter, is, do we have our loan administration fees, are those in this budget? Maybe I should wait for you to go through this line by line.
Yes.
What page are you on, Pete? What
For
is-
under sewer enterprise fund, it is line item 28.
28. Okay, all right, 4,700, okay. Yep, because again, in years past, it was a much higher amount that we had, as far as debt goes, it was over 10,000.
So again, looking at the sewer budget, the main change is has to do with the top part for sewer salaries and sewer payroll-related expenses. You can see as far as sewer maintenance, as far as our sewer expenses goes, it was, I think she missed a column on here, but, so that, yeah, I'm sorry, FY19 was last year, FY20 is what we're requesting in the big column, so. You can see how we reduced some stuff from, or what the changes we made last year from FY18 to FY19, and you'll see from FY19 to FY20, how everything is pretty much staying consistent, except for the changes in loan administration fees and indirect expenses, which are not set, which are recommended from outside of my office. You see, as far as revenues go, we're gonna get most of our revenue to offset our operational costs from user charges, privilege fees, and then betterments and the subsidy from taxation is pretty much set aside to pay down the debt service. So you'll see, line 50 privilege fees, line 52 betterments, and then add line 55 subsidy from taxation is pretty much offsets line 38, which is total debt service expenses.
Why are they so different? This is 6.84% on sewer. And this is 0.90.
Somehow they factor in.
No, I get that, but why is it the multiplier so different? Because
That's a good question.
this ends up being this for that.
Mr. Chair?
It's 7 times, it's this.
Yeah, right.
Indirect costs are from last year.
I guess what,
I understand that, but it's 2 different multipliers. One, why is there such a drastic difference in the multiplier for sewer and water?
Because of the amount of your budget. The amount of your budget determines your multiplier.
so the multiplier really is not a multiplier, what it is.
The
So it's
multiplier is,
relative to customer base? Or,
no, your total budget of 1.962
Yeah.
for sewer is what you
Okay,
divide,
all right.
you divide the total town budget by that, and that's your multiplier for
All
sewer.
right.
And then water, our total budget's much smaller,
yep, all right.
so you divide.
Peter, going back to sewer, what is our total budget without any debt service? In other words, what's this gonna cost us to run the plant?
1.02 million. So it's line 33, total sewer expenses. And then you just have to add in the sewer capital outlay account of $100,000 that we carry for capital
Okay, I got it,
purchases.
so we've got line 33, total sewer
102,
expenses.
344,
Correct,
plus 100,
right, plus 100?
plus the 100,000.
Okay, now that, the cost of operations is less than it was in years past.
Okay.
At least I think it is. I think if you go back and look at,
But if you go back and look at your FY18 budget,
Yeah.
in your sewer capital outlay account, you had $385,000 sitting there that you never spent a dollar
Correct.
from.
right,
Which was driving your indirect expenses up for money you never used. So if you look at what we've done to kind of make the budget more kind
can I
of
stop you there
realistic.
for a second?
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, since the money we didn't use, that drives up the indirect.
Yeah, because it's your budget. That's how.
Okay, so if we don't use it, then why aren't we getting credit on the following year for it?
Because that's not how they do it.
No, that's how we now wanna do it.
Yeah, we asked that last year. That's not
Well,
how
no,
they do it.
well, no, it's, first of all, it's,
We tried this last year, and that's not how they do it. It goes by your total
that's how they
approved budget.
choose, that's how they choose not to do it. I know
I
it's not us
understand.
against them, but I
We
mean,
did
it's-
this dance last year, and we ended up with the same result, so.
Yeah, yeah, you know, sometimes this ends up on the town floor.
It very well could, yes.
Very well could. And the thing is, and if I may, I just want to get an understanding here. When you come down to revenue, we have subsidy from taxation, $371,000. Where's that from?
Millennium,
So we're still getting money from them.
yes.
And how long are we going to get that money from them?
Till the pilot agreement expires?
Okay, and now, that money had been used in the past to pay for debt service on the water line.
No,
No, what had it been used for?
sewer. This is sewer
Oh,
budget.
sewer, okay, apologize. Okay, but,
The Millennium money was used for both,
Okay.
water and sewer. When,
do we still have sewer debt?
yes, 2022, I believe.
2022, okay.
Again, the project finished around 2001, 2002, and by the time you assess, you accrue all the debt and finalize it and do all the borrowings, I believe it's 2021 or 2022 before it's
Oh,
all gone.
okay. So, realizing that the pilot program from Millennium, that's money that belongs to the town, was to go to the town, then it was directed. It was directed where to go.
When the pilot agreement was approved, portions of that was spelled out in the agreement that would go to pay sewer debt, water debt, and some portion would also go back to the general taxpayers.
Okay, okay.
It was broken up into sevenths.
Okay, but if in fact, it would have been possible, or could have been possible, if we already had water and sewer in our town, those monies would have went to other places other than to water and sewer.
Correct.
But at the
It coulda
time,
went-
because we had these projects going on, the town, all the people in the town voted for
Yes.
this.
Yes.
Okay,
All the people in town voted for a portion of Millennium money to fund water projects,
Okay.
to fund sewer projects, and a portion to go back to the general taxpayer, to the general fund.
okay. And just trying to make the point here, and tell me if this is an incorrect statement. Of the money that we spent, none of this money comes from the taxpayers,
Correct.
other than one could say is, well, that's really tax money, the $371,000.
But it was tax money that was approved by the voter
Right,
to
exactly.
use, to pay down our debt. It does,
Right.
we do not use any taxpayer money to fund our operating budget, if that's a statement you're
That's my
making.
point. So
Correct.
that's a statement
We
we
are
can-
self-sufficient. Yes.
Self-sufficient.
We
Okay.
are operating, our budget is balanced based on future revenue. We're not using retained earnings to balance the sewer budget. It's self-sustaining
Okay, okay.
at this time. So as far as, I have a time schedule for the Finance Committee this Wednesday, I believe it's 7:30, to talk about to review both budgets with them. So if the board could vote to approve this budget, so when I go there, I can say that this is the budget that the commission has approved. Or if you wanna make changes, let me know, and I can make those changes, and then I can present something different, but.
I know for me, I'm recommending we don't approve the budget this time. And did you ask, you were gonna ask anyone who wants to go with you to that meeting can go?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
And, I think some of these things need a little more time. I know myself, I am still, not happy with, the fact that we're supporting a full-time administrator with the total cost of $80,000 for the year based on, what we need that individual for. I think the $80,000 certainly can be spent in a different way to where we don't total $80,000 for the work that needs to be done. So, and also is I think, and here I go again, but it's a pet peeve of mine, this indirect cost. If we are over budgeted and we're being charged for what we budget and then don't use it, then we should get call it a refund on our indirect cost the following year. And from what I'm hearing, and again, thank you for educating me, from what I'm being told is that they don't give refunds. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Well, no.
Well,
The
no,
what we don't use shows up as retained earnings. We don't lose that money.
I'm talking about the
As far
indirect
as the
costs.
indirect costs, yes. They don't, the indirect costs are not figured out on what your actual expenses were. It's what your budget was.
Okay.
And again, we asked that last year, and there was no change.
Okay, and had we made that point crystal clear to the finance committee? And they understood it?
They didn't make
Yeah,
any
some-
changes,
Yeah, well, and again, so I think that
so.
sometimes they get carried away and they look at the balance in our account and say, no, they don't need any money back. It's human. But that's all I'm saying. It's human for them to do that. And again, there are a lot of hardworking people there who mean well, but,
Well, you gonna go and discuss that with them,
well,
Peter?
as far as the finance committee goes, the finance committee recommends, they make a recommendation based on what we come back and talk to them about. They have final approval of what is printed, but at the town meeting, if the budget is open, we can certainly call a line item and ask for it to be either reduced or increased. So, Peter, do we have a legal line here?
Yes. Legal
I see,
expenses,
26?
line 26, yes.
Yeah, 10 grand.
Yep.
Now, and do we have the same for water?
Yes.
Okay, so it's 20 in all for water and sewer. What's up?
Water, we have 15.
125 on water.
Water, we have 15.
Okay, so 15. Okay,
So yes, we have our own legal expense line item.
right.
So we have access.
We've had that
Yes.
forever and ever, as long
Yep.
as I can remember.
Yep.
So. All right, sorry for taking up time, gentlemen.
You were hoping we'd approve this tonight.
Or some-
Rob doesn't want to, I could ask Alexa, Russ if they'd like to approve it, so when Peter goes to the planning board, he's got, finance committee, he's got something to say this, it can still be changed, but.
Well, I think if one of the members isn't comfortable about our budget, then we need to work on it until they are.
Okay, again, thank you for
haven't
that,
watched
but
past history. Nothing you're gonna do.
it doesn't give up, no, but it's, not that I want to be negative or combative here, but,
So I would, I understand the indirect costs, and to make the request that the indirect cost be calculated based on actual expenditures, not proposed budget. As far as the staffing goes, if you'd like to make a change, I'd ask for a motion on that so I can move forward and have direction on what type of staffing changes you want. As far as indirect costs, it's an ask, I can make the ask, I'm sure Mr. Lemansky will be at the Finance Committee meeting and he'll voice his own concerns, and I'll reference what was discussed here. But as far as personnel goes, if you're considering making any changes, I'd ask that you direct me to formalize that now, before we move much further forward.
Well, I think it's a little bit premature for all of the commissioners to make that decision, Pete, without knowing all of the information. I think if our budget is going to be reduced rather than increased, that's certainly something that I don't think the finance board would have a problem with. If they have problems, if in fact you come in and say, no, we messed up and we need to spend another $60,000 or $70,000, they're gonna have a problem with that. So I think if we go in the direction of less, we're not gonna have that, or we're less apt to be open to criticism. So I would suggest is that we make it a subject of our next meeting as far as what we're gonna do with that, if we're gonna do anything at all. So,
As far as the budget as a whole?
as far, and especially the fact, which will have a definite bearing on it, is to continue with the full-time administrator at a cost to the commission of $80,000 a year.
So at this time, there's no official changes you want made to the budget I presented?
I agree with that statement.
Okay. Do you want to move on to water? If there's no other questions on sewer? Sure.
If I may just make a point, is, if it's costing us $902,000 plus another $100,000, so that's about $1 million. That's really a good number, when we look at what we take in, because divided that by 4 quarters, that's $250 a quarter.
Mhm.
We're way over $250 a quarter.
At the moment, yep.
Yeah, and if I look back in past years, again, this number is right where we've always been.
That's why you've
About
been
$1
able
million.
to build, that's why you've been able to build your retained earnings and you have your capital improvement fund, now stabilization account ready,
Yeah.
ready to go, so.
Yeah, and I don't know if we've been stingy or not, but maybe our capital, maybe our capital improvements could have been a little more aggressive. Maybe we'd be making less repairs now.
Yes,
But you agree with that?
yes.
Okay.
But
and if
we'll change that a little bit
Yeah,
moving forward. I'll get you to spend some of it.
okay.
But, yes, I think there's been some repairs that probably could have been done in the past that weren't because you weren't comfortable with them at the time, maybe because of how they were presented, or maybe because the operator couldn't convince you they needed to be done. I think moving forward, I think there's some, again, as we talked with John at the last meeting, there's some proposed upgrades we'd like to do, or they'd like to do, and I agree with, that we're gonna be presenting to you, to hopefully present at town meeting for funding to do this summer. So, much like repairing RBCs 1 and 2 and what we've been able to do with that.
Right.
Just small steps and small changes, not a $3 million upgrade, but small things that make operating the plant more efficient, so that we're not worried about new customers coming on. We're not worried about meeting our NIPD's requirement, our limit, and just moving forward, making it a little bit easier to operate.
And you see that any of those capital expenditures would be funded by monies we already have in reserve,
Yes.
and we wouldn't be going out and borrowing in order to do those.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. Great. So the water budget's a little more straightforward, because we really don't have much for expenses from there. So other than the salary change, which, I mean, if you look at it, there really isn't a huge difference when you add them and set them apart. It's probably still within approximately 10%. And then, moving down to our expenses, I did reduce some of our expenses. You look at FY18, you were carrying $100,000 for engineering expenses, probably because you were still in the process of finalizing a whole bunch of plans and what was going on with all the water projects that you had, but you didn't really use. So last year, we or for this year, we reduced it to 20,000, from which we haven't really used much at all. So I'm proposing we reduce it again to 10. If you look at legal expenses in FY18, it was 5,000. We increased it last year to 25 in case we needed that for legal help to negotiate to become a consecutive water supply and all the other stuff we had going on. We really haven't used much of that funding at this time for that, so I'm proposing we reduce it to 15, because becoming a consecutive water supply is still on the table, and if we do get a little more formal with those discussions moving forward, we're gonna have to bring in some sort of town council to help us rewrite the agreement. And other than that, everything, we still have, loan administration fees are zeroed out because all of the loans are paid. And indirect expenses, again, have decreased because they're based on FY19's budget versus FY18's. So, because we lost all of our debt service, our indirect expenses was pretty much cut in half. And if you look down to revenue, we're looking at using funding, the monies that we get back from Southbridge in the amount of $30,000. The water capital and debt fund of $50,000. That's the capital improvement receipts reserved for appropriation that we got from ExxonMobil. The $1.5 million that's sitting in that account. Last year, we used it to fund the $100,000 line item. We have yet to use any money from that. Donna has told me if we don't use any money from that, it goes directly back into the receipts reserve for appropriations, so that when we approved the FY19 budget, the balance in that account went from 1.5 to 1.4. Whatever we don't use from that will go back, so it will increase it back to 1.5 million. Because we haven't had to use it, I'm not sure we need to carry the full $100,000 for the entire year, so I reduced it to 50,000. The main point for having that money there is in case we have any infrastructure, I guess drastic infrastructure repairs that we have to do, such as water main breaks or anything like that, that we just have to get fixed. We'll have funding there to pay for that.
Is that fund producing interest income?
I believe so, yes. We asked that last year as well, and I believe the
Yeah, I
answer
know.
was yes.
Yeah, because one of the answers we had received at first was no.
I believe at the end it was yes.
So for all of our accounts, it's yes.
Most of them, yes, I believe so.
Okay.
There's still some funding left in the water sewer superintendent fund that we got from ExxonMobil, and the balance is gonna be funded from retained earnings. We have $150,000 in retained earnings, and of that, we're gonna use 121 to balance the budget.
And where'd those retained earnings come from, Pete?
Just previous budgets and appropriations that weren't used and just get turned back into retained earnings from
Okay.
previous years.
And on the income side, as far as the payments from Southbridge, are those payments pretty much up to date?
Yes. I have to check on the, we just received a check today for their IMA payment for 2018 of $42,000. What I'm not sure of is I need to just confirm that we received the 15% or 25% of their connection fees that we're supposed to get for Charlton
I believe it's
customers.
15.
15?
I believe it's 15. Yeah, I could be mistaken. So when you,
That's the only one I have to check on.
you've got down here
30?
other fees, yeah, 30. So really,
Safe. Conservative?
no, not, I'm with you, okay?
Yeah.
But so, okay, the real number, at least for last year, was 42.
Correct.
Okay.
So I'd rather be a little conservative and have extra go back into retained earnings than end up short.
And looking ahead, that number should be growing
As our usage grows, yes.
as our customer base grows.
As our customer base grows, as our usage grows,
Right.
yes, that number will grow.
Okay.
But that number is also determined based on what they have in their retained earnings. So the way that, so you take Southbridge's, you take Charlton's customer use, not including Millennium, and then you take Southbridge's total revenue and divide it into that, so you get your percentage, much like you do for indirect expenses.
Right.
Then you take that percentage, and we get that percentage of their retained earnings for water.
Right, so we're dependent on their good management skills, because the higher profit they have,
The higher their retained,
retained earnings.
the less expense, the less expenses they have during the year.
Right.
The higher the retained earnings, the more we will get from it.
Right, the percentage doesn't change. What changes is their
Their
retained
retained
earnings,
Yes.
which is dependent on what they,
How they prepare their budget going into it and how much of it they spend, just like we're doing. Okay. Is there any questions on that?
just,
So-
one other, sorry, Peter, but
Sure.
if we look at total expenses,
Mhm.
as far as the water budget goes, you get 48,859, correct?
That does not include personnel.
Does not include personnel.
So you'll see how it's broken down. You have your total water
Okay,
salaries,
okay,
then you
okay,
have your
all right.
total payroll-related expenses.
All right, so our total is 224.
Correct.
All right, and then obviously you balanced it out because you've moved some money over
From retained earnings.
from retained earnings.
Yep.
Really, those salaries are heavy for water. When they just, when the salaries between water and sewer just get divided in half. Say, fine, we get this account, sewer, we'll get this account, water. But, as far as hours goes, is it really 50/50?
I think you can make that case. As far as myself and Steve, Sue, maybe not so much. But I bet you it's probably fairly close, yeah. I might be a little heavy on the water side, actually.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I think between, again, my position and Steve's position, it's, especially when he's out in the field doing all the water work in the summertime, I bet you it's close. It's close enough that I feel comfortable doing it. If it wasn't, I'd probably tell her no, split it differently, and ask her to do 60/40 or something like that to be more accurate. But I think 50/50 is, for now, is right where it needs to be.
Just to flip, just as far as the water goes, I know there's a line item in ExxonMobil's budget for inspection, and based on the fact, are they gonna have 3 crews running at one time?
They may have more, because they're gonna have both pump station projects going, so they may have more than that, actually.
Yeah, the pump stations, and it's not as, don't get me wrong, it's critical, but it's not a daily, hourly critical item such as installing pipe to where they've got to be
I
watched.
disagree, because if we take over the system and we end up operating it, we're responsible to water to the tap, so that pump station is very important, as well as.
No, the pump station's important, I'm just saying that the amount of inspection for the pump station. Because right now, all of the pipes have been brought into the building, into the base.
Oh, you're talking about the Route 169 pump
Right,
station?
yeah.
Oh, I'm talking about Bay Path and Overlook.
Okay, both of those, we don't own either one of those. We're not gonna own either one of those. Those are owned by Bay Path and,
Right now, they're gonna be owned and operated by the respective property owners, yes. Depending on who you talk to, the town of Southbridge does not wanna operate them. In
right,
discussions with Veolia, if they're the operator, they would wanna operate them so that they know what's happening, because again, they'd be responsible for water to the tap, so. I don't know there's 2 schools of thought there. As far as myself looking at it, I think if we were to go consecutive, I would feel more comfortable with us operating the pump stations, so we know what's happening, and we know if there's issues, we know the PMs are being done, we know that they're operating correctly and being taken care of. Because if something happens and there's something wrong with the water coming out the tap, we can't come back and say, well, we weren't operating the pump station, it's not our fault.
yeah.
We don't get that pass.
And that's why we worked it the way we did, to where the 2 property owners are responsible for those pump stations.
Yeah, but we're still we're, as the public water supply, we're still responsible for the final tap,
Right, and Alex,
regardless of who operates those pump stations.
I agree with you, that's if we're the operator, but right now, we're not the
Right
operator.
now, we're not. So right now, again, but as far as overseeing the installation, I think we still need to be involved in case we do become consecutive and we are responsible for them.
Okay, and both of those stations are under, all three of them are under, as far as ExxonMobil goes, and they're doing all three. Kleinfelder is the engineering firm that's gonna be doing the inspection for them.
Correct.
All right, so, and, we would just have someone there as,
Yep.
as additional.
Routine inspections, additional, yeah.
Right.
You'll
right.
still have McClure Engineering review any real submissions for changes, any in-depth revisions that need to be
Right, but-
done, but it's more so, yeah, just us to, just so we have someone from our office putting eyes on stuff.
Yeah, but there's not hours and hours and hours of inspection there.
Well, it's minimal, it's probably a half an hour a day. You just, you come up with a loop that you
Just to
make,
do a
and
loop.
you
Yeah,
just do
okay,
that loop, and you
yeah.
just kinda check in on,
Okay.
and you change up that loop a little bit, so they don't get comfortable with when you're gonna be there, and just keep showing up, and, you show
Okay, so we
show
got
up with a
3
camera.
pump stations, that's 90 minutes.
You're gonna have L.
Just
Stevens,
having fun.
yeah, yeah.
And the real point I'm making is that if we're gonna have are they gonna have, out in the road, installing pipes, how many crews are they gonna have doing that?
So you're gonna have work on L. Stevens Road, one crew. You're
Okay.
gonna have work on Old Worcester Road, just like when they finished.
Yep.
Be a second crew. I'm not sure if they're gonna start with a lateral crew following Old Worcester Road at this time. It's not defined yet. So
Okay.
I think it's gonna come down to what they have for personnel. It's gonna come down to what type of material they're digging in the road and how best to use their personnel. So they may end up, if they hit ledge on Old Worcester Road, they may split that crew and send a couple guys back to start doing services. So it's not gonna be consistent day in and day out. It's gonna change based on what they're facing.
Because the McClure's inspection is capped at $100,000.
Yes,
That can go fairly quick, so the question
most definitely.
is then how do we backfill that other? But also, understanding is that Kleinfelder will certainly provide reports to us if requested, as far as their inspections.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And, right, and they're a PE, but, we're responsible.
Who's
to
a
have-
PE?
Kleinfelder.
The person, not the person
Oh,
on
no, no,
site.
no.
Not the resident.
No,
Not the
but-
person on site.
No, but they.
And that person on site's also bouncing around jobs as well, so there might be some vacancies on that
Well, then you're gonna
oversight as well, so,
you're also gonna have, H-foot,
yes.
Warner Lane,
The
That's
rest
going
of
on.
Berry
Yeah.
Corner.
Berry Corner,
You mean as far as laterals go?
yeah.
Yeah.
The
In Maine,
residential
on-
connections. I understand Southbridge is also doing inspections up there, but,
No, Southbridge is doing inspections, and as well as Ty and Blond is the engineer of record for them.
Mhm.
So, it's, I just want to make sure that we do have a backup plan for inspection, if needed, that's all, with the ExxonMobil.
Mhm.
Is that in the budget?
no. No, because so you wanna fund inspections from our budget?
I'm just saying is that, do we need
So
a line item for that?
you can always
if
add that
needed.
at fall town meeting if you need to.
We'd know it by then. Yep, okay.
I'd recommend, I probably wouldn't do it now, again, because if you were to make your engineering expenses $100,000 and get the budget to balance, it just increases your indirect cost for something you're not gonna use.
But we're working on getting credit now.
It's
When we
not.
go forward.
We worked on that last year and it didn't
Well,
happen, so.
we didn't work hard enough. I think
Okay.
that we may need to bring it to the next level that's beyond this room
Yeah,
to get it.
possibly.
Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen.
Go ahead, water privilege fees.
So, well, no, just to finish this off, I'll let the finance committee know that we discussed the budget as we present it to them. The board didn't vote to approve it yet. They had questions about the indirect expenses, and they're also considering personnel. And I'll just leave it at that if you want. Unless,
We're
Good.
very close. Sounds good to me.
okay. And the last thing I wanted, while we're on the budget, I know we talked last time about, the ExxonMobil settlement money, the 2.68 million. You asked to get the balance of what was in that account,
What's in our account? Yeah.
2.68 million. They haven't expended any of it.
Okay.
That's what I was told. I gave you a copy of the general ledger that shows
Excuse me,
that.
Peter. If that money is gonna get spent, it has to go to town floor.
Yes.
Okay, but it was earmarked for water,
No.
what do you mean, no?
It says receipt reserved for appropriation, ExxonMobil settlement reserved for general fund.
Wrong.
Well,
Right, did you read from our town administrator, what the town administrator had written? Where those funds supposed to be? I gave you a copy, did you read it?
yeah.
It's called the news release, April 12, 2016. Real simple. The remaining funds shall support the water department, parentheses, i.e. operations capital, expansion, design, close parentheses, as appropriated by town meeting.
Okay.
Right, so in no way do I see general fund. So out of the $7.75 million and the paying off of the debt, the balance is to go to support the water department.
Okay.
Unless the person who wrote this doesn't know what they're talking about.
I'm just letting you know where the money is. I didn't write that.
Okay, well, I'm
And-
letting
and-
you know that, you know, what this document says, and I gave you a copy,
Yes.
okay? Thank you.
So, do you want to put an article on town meeting floor to transfer that money into a different account?
I think maybe whoever created,
Because this fund was created at town meeting. This money was transferred into this fund at town meeting. It wasn't just put there by one person. So if you want to do something different and put it into a different account,
that may sound like a real good idea. I think if there's any time to do it, yeah.
the warrant closes tomorrow.
The warrant for the
For
town,
the town meeting.
the annual town meeting closes, are we talking about May,
Yeah.
May 20th? Why
The
is it
final-
closing?
Just, I don't know.
I-
The final motions don't need to be made, but the savers for the articles and the headings have to be in.
You were a selectman for
Little while.
a little while.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a warrant close that
I
far
don't.
away?
I don't recall the dates. Possibly. I'm sure, I don't recall
It's
that.
extreme, it seems,
I think as far as setting the
Seems
warrant
far
with
out.
the articles, I'm not sure if it's too far away or not. I'd have to, again, understand why, but I don't recall the threshold for dates off the top of my head. What's the March 10th? So you're talking,
I don't think that
You're
the
talking
warrant
10
is
weeks?
supposed, like Peter says, it's just the placeholders.
but
No.
that is the
So-
warrant.
yeah, yeah.
but
with-
You have to have your placeholder.
The annual
in,
town meeting is
but
what,
not
May
the
18th?
actual warrant.
Somewhere around there.
May 18th,
So 10 weeks,
10 weeks,
8, 9 weeks.
10 weeks.
I'm just
Sounds
relaying.
like strategy to
I'm
me, that's
relaying
what
the-
that sounds like.
I'm relaying the information I was given.
Yeah, and of course, that can be open and closed by the selectmen.
Not if there's deadlines that they have to meet and it's not strategy.
I've never seen it, again, of all the years, I'm sorry, I'm just an old guy,
Yeah.
all I recall is usually it'll close a week, maybe 2 weeks before, 3
No,
weeks.
it has to be posted well before that. You have to post it in the post office well before that, most definitely. They may be closing it a little early to make sure they have all the language done and so that they don't have to do anything last
Peter,
minute.
The
I'm just-
language gets done at 6:35 in the
Not
selectmen's
the
room on the night
motion,
of the
not
meeting.
what you post. You have to post to that warrant,
a
I believe,
general
at
idea.
least 4 weeks. And you
Yep.
have to have more than a general, it's gonna be pretty specific to what you wanna do. So your initial heading and the body of that has to be done and approved, at least 4 weeks to be posted. And then, yes, the motion can be done,
We can do a placeholder if we want to.
or, I'm just saying, if you're looking, or maybe you can just do it under or interdepartmental transfers, but if you want to move forward on that, you have to let me know with a motion, so I don't just go to the town administrator saying, hey, I want that money.
No, not that I want that money, I'm just saying is we need you to do what, we need the proper, language to be at the, accountant's office, that was determined 3 years ago.
I referenced the letter.
Okay,
If you'd like me to move forward with it, if you wanna make a motion, then I can maybe move forward with a little more backing.
okay. And, I'd like to make a motion is that, we have an article that deals with, clarifying the language of the remaining balance, if that's the term, remaining balance of the ExxonMobil funds.
As referenced in the press release.
As referenced by the press release of April 12, 2016, authored by Town Administrator Robin Craver.
Do I hear a second on that?
Second.
We discussed it anymore?
Nope.
It's pretty clear. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Nay.
Okay.
Okay. I believe that's it for the budget, unless there was any other questions? Water privilege fees. I need some specific direction from the board on how you want me to move forward with water privilege fees, as we're gonna be having people connect to the water line. If we're gonna use a connection fee, or if you want me to enact the privilege fee that was previously approved. The privilege fee has not been charged to anybody in the past, and it is rather confusing to which areas it can be applied to. The connection fee to me seems more straightforward for the office. It's a one-time fee. It's easier for the town hall to track, and if we do go consecutive, we can just continue to use that same fee moving forward and just collect the entire amount rather than Southbridge collecting their portion. But again, because we're gonna have people coming forward to connect, such as Green Gold Group, I'd like to just know which direction you want me to go, so I can make sure that this office, so that we don't miss any more connection / or privileged water fees.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, I'd like to make the point that we do have a privilege fee that was brought up and voted on back in October 6, 2014. And
I thought at the last meeting was determined if it hasn't just sat there dormant and haven't done anything with it, that, you know, what you were saying, Russ, from what we went through legally last October? That we'd have to make some other kind of decision or revote it. As to not rehash all this again.
So I'm not saying there was not a motion made. I'm just saying in our discussion, there hasn't been a clear decision for the office to move forward and continue and to truly enact the decision that was made. Because that previous motion references the EDU method that was used for betterments, and that EDU method and those betterments no longer exist. So I didn't know if you wanted to revisit it, clean it up and clarify it, or if you want the office to use that, then that's fine, we can do that. I just wanna make sure that we're all in agreement on which direction we're moving forward with.
if I may, excuse me, Russ. The agreement with ExxonMobil is pretty clear on the fact of, that the town is not to charge betterment/privilege fees to anybody that's within their service area to where they're putting a line in. And they went on to say is that, after the line is been activated, that the residents have 1 year from when that bell goes off to connect. And if they don't connect thereafter, the town of Charlton can charge a privilege fee for anybody else who comes along.
Mhm.
And so are we in agreement with that? That's what was said?
Yeah.
And that was great agreed upon. So, and I know the consensus was at the meeting when, as Alex pointed out, when we did discuss privilege fees, is that, it's tough to go back to those who we should have charged, or who our administrator should have done the paperwork and he didn't do, okay? That it's tough now to go back, but I think what we need to do is we need to we shouldn't drop these privilege fees. What we should do is say, all right, we made a mistake there, then fine, then let's put that aside, but we need to do is move forward. The town of Charlton Water Department has privilege fees, and this is what they are, as were voted on back in 2016, or whatever it was, 2014. And that we hold those. And that the connection fee, that's between Southbridge and the homeowner. But the cost of getting that line and all of the infrastructure that runs the water to that curb stop, that's what the privilege fee is for. It's not for, the connecting. What it is the cost that it costs to get that water to that point.
And it didn't cost the town anything.
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. And the thing is you have a continued cost. Our system, I think the value was over 30 to, it was 30 million before they started doing the work they did here. And there's been cost to the town of Charlton. So it's not as if we are, I don't think it's fair to apply the betterment rule is that a town cannot collect additional funds up and beyond what it costs to put the infrastructure in. Is that because of the ongoing costs, and because of the fact that we have little or no means of cash flow, because we don't own the water that goes through the pipe, and we only get a percentage of their billing, we have to be prepared that we need to fix those pipes. According to our IMA agreement, we're responsible for those pipes. A flood, whatever happens, we've got to be able to pay for those. And I think just to do a connection fee, I don't think that's enough. I don't think it's fair to the future of the department. Because if you were to go and say, all right, by the time we get done here with this new systems we're putting in, take the 30 and move it up to $45 million, and then what they told us at water school is that you should be somehow putting aside 3% of your total value, which is like depreciation. And if you need to, that's why the government says you're able to deduct depreciation, because that's money you should put aside because you're gonna need to replace the asset that's there. We can't send our people down the road here with no fund to replace broken parts, broken pipes, worn out parts. So I don't think a $2,000 or $4,000 connection fee is at all relative to what it costs to bring not only water to your property, such as a well and building a house, But potable water to where someone else is responsible for that, especially if it's going to a business, has to meet all the state standards for potable water. So, that's where I'm coming from.
So unfortunately, I don't think no matter what you charge for a privilege or connection fee is gonna give you enough money to feel comfortable that you're adequately gonna be able to fund repairs on that system. Which is why the minute you took over ownership of all of those lines, you almost committed to becoming a consecutive water supply, so you get continued revenue, and you can take money from that continued revenue to set aside, along with connection or privilege fees, to offset your cost of maintenance over the next 50 or 100 years. No matter what you do with just connection fees or privilege fees, you're not gonna be able to offset the cost to maintain the system. Because you're not gonna have that many connections every year, like we discussed,
Well, we're certainly having quite a few connections that are coming up.
that you're not getting any money for. As you
Right,
mentioned,
and-
whether
well,
Casella, you're not getting any?
We're getting 15%. I think the Casella one, that's, in my mind, I don't see that as being closed. I don't see anywhere in agreement to where it says we were gonna give
The
that away.
administrative consent order?
Yeah, you show it to me in there.
I'll try and find it.
Okay, you
There's,
actually show it
I'm
to me.
pretty sure it's spelled out in the ACO that everybody was a party to, that there's no fees to be charged.
I didn't see where it was, but I would like to see where it does say that.
I don't disagree that the commission did sign the ACO, but that was no more than 2 meetings in this room to where that whole thing came together, including the original inspection amount budget from 200,000 down to 20,000. We had nothing to do with that.
Mhm.
And I was unaware at the time when we signed that there was no connection fees. Because at the time we signed, it was believed that it may not happen because they couldn't do it for $10 million, which was the maximum expenditure.
Yeah, I'll double check. I was under the impression that there was no connection fees.
So under the motion that was voted years ago, with the current fee is an estimated 50%
Mhm.
of the 4,894.32. Where does that 48 number come from?
The total betterment to offset the initial project cost for the Route 20 water line.
Okay.
The way the betterments was done, it was done in two pieces, at 50% at the beginning, and 50% to be paid by the end of the project.
The problem, I believe, was when you watered up a portion of Route 20 and not the total water line, you couldn't assess betterments to everybody.
Right.
So you just did the 50% of the total so the total project cost for, I believe, the Route 20 was, say, $4 million minus what you're getting from Millennium. You take that figure and you figure it out, what that cost associated with to everybody along that water line. And then because not everyone could connect, you divided that by 50% and did a temporary betterment for just those who had the ability to connect to water on that project.
Okay, so
I mean, I
Let's-
wasn't on the commission, but does that sound
Yeah.
somewhat accurate?
let's flash forward to 2 or 3 years after the time limit expires and we have a customer down on Old Worcester Road who wants to tie in.
Okay.
Now, under what was previously voted, what would they be charged?
$2,447.16.
Okay,
Be one EDU, much like sewer.
okay.
This is the EDU method, so
So
one
the
house is
EDU
one
method.
EDU.
Yep.
Straight, correct? One EDU method. The water privilege fee was based on the 50% value, not the whole value.
I think we used the FAR method, just as a point of reference.
I know you discussed it, the motion doesn't reference it.
So,
From what I read through the minutes and
Okay.
watched some of the stuff, I know the FAR method was
Was
discussed.
what's used to
to-
do the water.
But when you talked about the privilege fee, the FAR method was not, and I'm not familiar with the
Okay.
FAR method, so that doesn't, maybe that's why this.
So that answers the residential customer question. Now, on the
That's
commercial
if,
side of
unless you use the
things-
FAR method, which I'm not really familiar with.
Well, let's just say on the commercial side of things, someone's tying in on.
That's
20
where the
and they're
fire
tying
method
in a-
came into.
Tying
Because it
in a
was,
12-inch.
because it was so many commercial versus residential, and it was such a disproportionate number when you looked at,
Because it's Route 20.
yeah, so the residential people would have been paying exorbitant amounts, and it wasn't really relative to what potentially, industrial user may have. That's why we went with the fire method. So,
Okay. So, under the current way of doing business, what would a 12-inch connection be?
You'd have to figure out what the ED,
Have to figure out. based on-
unless it was the FAR method, you'd have to figure out how the FAR method determines that. I'm not,
yeah, the
I'm
fire,
not
fire
sure.
method takes all this into account much differently than an EDU, because there
Okay.
was so much commercial property associated when we did this.
again, I'm not familiar with the FAR method, so I don't know. In Framingham, for connection fees, it goes by line size, correct?
Yeah.
So if a company has 1 million square feet and they do a 12-inch connection, they pay the connection fee for 12-inch.
Yeah, it's roughly $1,000 an inch,
Right.
somewhere around.
But the
12
building
inches.
size does not matter. So if it's a
No, it's a
1 million
connection
square
to
foot
me.
building or a 10,000 square foot building, if they request a 12-inch connection, they pay the same amount.
It's
So
their
it's very,
connection.
it's very similar to this
Yeah.
chart.
It would be very similar to this.
Which,
Okay.
this chart, again, Southbridge, this is how Southbridge charges.
Yep.
And this is how all the neighboring communities charge for water.
Well, you said
For
you called up
connections.
Shrewsbury and a couple other communities.
We did, I presented the
Yeah.
spreadsheet previously on what other communities are charging.
So,
And they all go by line size
that's pretty
for
much,
water.
line size is the simplest.
I don't know why it's different for sewer. But,
And you have a problem with that, Rob?
If I may, just a little clarification here. The difference between water and sewer is you can't charge a betterment / privilege fee for water unless the water's available. Versus sewer, you can charge a betterment for sewer because the assumption is it's gonna become available. That was a Gene Knight lesson from years ago. But if I, just for clarification, Russell, your example of a resident on Lower Worcester Road who, after the cutoff time, either develops a lot and wants to connect to water, according to the original motion, the actual total fee is gonna be $4,894. Am I correct in that?
No,
No.
4,400,
Excuse me,
because you're
$4,894.
gonna add in 2,000 to Southbridge.
no, he's talking
No.
about the motion on the bottom of the page.
I know,
Motion, no,
No, the motion.
that's a whole separate thing, because so for a homeowner,
Well, what I'm saying is current fee is an estimated 50% of the 44, given $2,447.16.
right, and then when this was done, is that, it was done during the process, so, because it was unknown what the final cost was going, but this was an estimate that more than likely wouldn't go over this, so this is what they ended up, presenting to the commission, and the commission voted in. And what's allowed by statute is it's allowed by statute to collect half of the money up front.
Not more than that.
Not more than, thank you, Paul, not more than half, because we needed cash flow at that time in order to pay, these, the bills coming forward, and that's how that was put together. Then, when the deal came with ExxonMobil, they said, look, we want you to eliminate, based on our service area to where we're putting pipes in, we want that to include the $7.75 million to include any betterments or privilege fees. But after the 12 months is over, then it goes back to where it used to be.
Yeah, and that's all I'm trying to establish. So under the way we're supposed to be doing business right now, they're going to pay the town of Charlton $2,447.16. They're gonna pay the town of Southbridge $2,000.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but then they still owe another $2,447.16 to the town of Charlton.
Yeah.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yep. I don't
As
have,
opposed to this, what Peter's proposing, right? Which would just leave it as a flat fee of $1,000.
Or you
Which
could, I
turns
mean,
out to be 1,300, because you gotta take the 15% from the $2,000, and that becomes 1,700 to Southbridge and 1,300 to us. And that goes respectively across the board. So. You don't wanna make it so cost prohibitive, if no one's gonna come, bring business to town.
No.
If they can go next, 3 miles down the road,
Mhm.
find a same piece of property and base it on size of line and be done with it, and
as far as single-family homes goes, this is still a bargain.
I agree. I totally agree.
Based on, well, what's your option? Go drill a well, okay?
Oh,
And then,
I
you know-
know that's not the answer we
Yeah,
do it
yeah.
every week.
I don't know if in fact, I don't know if a commercial industrial, if in fact using the Title V method is the best way to go, or if we were gonna use the EDU method, which is the town has used all along, that we need to change the calculation, that one EDU represents not 200 gallons, it represents 330, is what it should be. Three-bedroom house, 330. Title V says you only really use 60% of it. 60% of 330 is 198. There's where your 200 comes from. Across the state, they use that, and they use that. if
yeah,
you
but that's
don't-
on sewer.
Yes, that is on sewer.
But
Okay, but
it
it's
doesn't
based on-
directly correlate back to one another.
From a point of view of water use, because if you have a bedroom, or Title V is they're saying,
Yeah, but if you have an industrial property using commercial basis, and they have some kind of industrial makeup water, you gotta look at what the 100% of that water is.
I don't disagree with you, Alex, that's why I think if from a residential, I'm fine, but when it goes to commercial industrial, I think, we might wanna take a closer look at whether we use the FAR method or whether we use the EDU method. And if we were to use the EDU method, I think it needs to be, the formula needs to be calculated so it's more in line with a home. Because a home only pays for 200 gallons, it doesn't pay for 330.
I like Peter's method. It's cleaner.
you can change the amounts if you like.
No, whatever, the numbers are numbers, but it's just a cleaner, more understandably, method of doing it.
There's less chance of inequality with your method of charging people.
Yep.
You know, like I said, straightforward, this is what it is, and
It's easy
And I
to
know
explain, there's no,
believe all what you said before about methods we had tried before, but,
Yep.
to me, once Mobile Exxon came in, all that went out the window. And we're starting from scratch now, and essentially asking the question tonight, how do you wanna do it? And myself, I do prefer the water connection fees, as opposed to the EDU method or anything else.
you're not talking about breaking 50% of it out that has to be paid later, it's just, there's the cost.
Well, I mean, anyone can say based off of our discussion that it's definitely a cleaner method because we just spent 30 minutes discussing
It's definitely what?
a cleaner method. Because we just spent 30 minutes discussing.
But considerable
and-
less income.
Well, so let's adjust the
Didn't say these numbers had to stay, I'm just saying for
yeah.
the way of doing
No,
things.
that's what I'm
yeah.
saying, let's adjust the money. Make it clean and make it more in line with where we think it should be, so that it is cut and dry, and it's not, it doesn't take a panel of 8 judges to decide what the fee's gonna be.
I mean,
I just wanna make the point is if a developer came in and wanted to do a 5-lot subdivision, and the 5-lot subdivision, he's gonna run the water up there, and that's his, excuse me, the developer comes in, he's got A&R lots, got 5 of them in a row, boom, 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 boom. So he wants to connect. So the 5 lots, by the time you get done paying the full boat of the 4,800, it's a little bit less than $25,000. So if we go by, a home more than likely is either, it's either the 3/4, I don't know if you need an inch, people would want an inch, I think they're almost one and the same. So, from the, not Southbridge, just from the point of view of Charlton, is how do we go and make up that $24,000? Do we take this 1,000 and move it up to $4,000, $5,000? As far as, the water, we call it a water connection fee, but Southbridge still gets their own water connection fee. We'd be calling it a privilege fee. That's what we need to call
no,
it.
we wouldn't.
We're not doing the connection, Southbridge is doing the connection, Peter.
We can also charge a connection fee.
All right, well, semantics, whatever you wanna call it.
Well,
Okay.
it's a big difference, because connection fee is paid up front. You don't get to,
We can always vote our privilege fees need to be paid up front.
Okay.
That says the same thing. All right, but I'm saying is if we're trying to achieve a goal here of having would love it to be a perpetual fund, but a fund to where when these things break, that there's money available to fix them. And they're not gonna break all at once, but I mean, it's just like we see with the treatment plant. As it gets older and more used, then more things keep on going and going. So, and we're fortunate that we have the ability to pay for them, rather than running it lean and.
So put it in line with a well. Just for the sake of discussion.
Okay. Then,
You know a starting point for a well
Yeah.
is $6,000,
Yep,
right? It costs $6,000
minimum, again,
Minimum.
before you have it tested.
Mhm.
Cause then it can go
Minimum,
go
before
up
you,
to
before you drill
11, 12,
past
14.
300, whatever, it's $6,000. So, $6,000 is a deal for anybody who's looking to tie into water. It's guaranteed, right?
Yeah.
So let's reduce it down to 5. Now everybody's really happy. So that would mean Charlton's side of things would be 3,000.
No, why are you mixing them? You're mixing them. Don't mix them, because we have our own fee. We call it a privilege fee. We don't call it a tie-in fee, because what you're doing is you're calling the connection fee, and with Southbridge, the whole amount is $5,000?
Yeah.
It should be 7.
Yeah, but then now you're driving business out of town.
Well,
Now you're making it more expensive, and the person's gonna say, well, I'll just drill a well.
first of all, you can't drill a well.
Yeah,
if
you're not
you do-
allowed.
Okay?
Yeah.
And also is, I don't know anybody, unless they're a crazy gambler, who would drill a well instead of connecting to public water.
I don't either.
Yeah. Yeah, granted, with the public water, you're gonna have a bill every quarter, $160, $200. But you have the guarantee that water is tested every day.
Mhm. But if you're gonna be paying for it over time, it should be fractionally less upfront.
Are we gonna allow that? To be paid over time? Or are you talking about paying the
No,
bill?
I'm talking about paying the bill. You're paying for water.
You're paying for water, correct, okay? Have you ever had your pump hit by lightning?
Fortunately, no.
You know what has to
No
happen.
other
Have you had a
customers
pump
do.
go?
Sure,
It's a-
of course.
It's, you know, you
Yep.
don't know the time nor the
Mhm.
day,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And then,
There's a cost to everything.
then pull $1,000 bill out of your pocket. That's what it's gonna
Mhm.
cost you when the pump goes, and it will go.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't know when. So, and you do have to pay for the electricity to operate it. You know, when people say, geez, I got my own well, I got free water. No, it's nothing free.
No. You pay for the electricity too.
I mean, I'm not trying to be a bad guy here, I'm just trying to, is looking forward.
Absolutely, and I'm trying to find that middle ground to simplify the process way down the road as well.
I don't know why you're
Continue as we
putting it
go.
back on building a house, I'd put it back on the industrial users,
Well, it's fine
cost
too,
of doing business.
sure.
That's where you're gonna get a bigger bang for your buck, cause
So where do you think?
they're, whatever they need per fire flows or industrial flows is, that's gonna be dictated, they're stuck to it. They can't back out of it if that's the land that they've purchased and that's what they're gonna do. That's where you're gonna make your money, not on building houses.
So where do you think those numbers should be?
I have no idea, I'm just saying,
Yeah. Well, just for discussion, what?
so they're, what are they, they're not even $2,000 an inch. $1,500 an inch. I mean, anything above 6 inch, I'd match or go beyond what they're at for Southbridge. Cause once everything goes live on Route 20, and that's where you're gonna have potential of all your commercial customers.
How many commercial customers are gonna sign up, or not sign up? How many commercial customers are there gonna be in the next 5 to 10 years? Let's just look at what happened the last couple of years. So if you look back at the one that's just came on Route 20, if that was a 12-inch, and if you charged them $30,000, and that was for 7,500 gallons. Divide that by 200, how many houses you got there?
Well, let me ask you a question with, on Treehouse. Use Treehouse as an example.
Yep.
What's the scenario there?
7,500 gallons.
Okay. So what did they pay?
Nothing,
0.
zero. Other than what they paid to Southbridge, which might have been,
What was that, 10 grand, 8-inch connection?
is that what they got, is an 8-inch?
Well, they might have done a 6 and a 4, I'm not sure.
Okay, so,
But
A
they pro-
6 and a 4?
Or, yeah, they did
Yeah,
a 6 and a 4 or an 8-inch.
So that's 14,000 or
10,000.
10,000, okay?
So the problem with your motion previously made is that it referenced the FAR method. As Alex said, I don't think it was the EDU method,
With the motion that was made back in
2010
2016?
or 2016.
2014. Did we mention the FAR method in here?
In the minutes, it was always referenced as the FAR method.
Well, in the minutes of the fee, but in the minutes of the motion that this was discussed?
It wasn't referenced, neither EDU
Right, right.
nor FAR was
Right, and I thought
referenced.
we wanted to pretty much mirror the sewer betterment.
Well, the problem is if you use the FAR method to create your $4,894 number, then you need to use the FAR number to implement your privilege fee, because that's how it was created. If you use the EDU method to create that $4,800 figure, then you can use the EDU method to implement it differently. But as Alex said, because so much is commercial, when you take and do 7,500 gallons divided by 200, or even by 330,
Yeah, it's over 30 houses.
and multiply that by $4,800, you're talking about an enormous privilege fee, much like the sewer was. But
And
is,
you're talking about building a fund to make repairs in the future.
Mhm.
That's all I'm saying, is, you know,
but there's more than one way to do that, much like you do with sewer. You use your privilege fees and you also use your operating expenses to set 10%, try and set 10% of that aside annually to fund future costs, so.
So, can you tell me an exact amount, what it should have been under this method for?
I don't know the FAR method, I can only tell you if it was an EDU method, if you.
it was myself, Joe Habler, and Joe Spiewak, I think, who did this along with Chris McClure. I'm the only one left, I don't recall all the,
Okay.
Chris could probably bring you up to speed on all the particulars of how we got where we ended up.
if you use the EDU method like we did for sewer at 200 gallons per EDU, it's approximately $183,000
Okay.
For 7,500 gallons.
for 7,500 gallons per day.
Yep.
As opposed to under the connection fee.
However, water, that,
See,
it's hard, it's hard to
direct-
commingle to, because
I know-
they're,
I know what
they're
you're
using
saying.
14,000 gallons per day.
Right, it's
Of
not a
full
direct
water.
correlation, that's why,
I know what you're saying, but what I'm just trying to come up with a, okay, this business comes into
They're
town
not-
or they don't?
well, that's
Based
my
off
point I
of-
was making.
Based off
Treehouse
of that,
wanted,
they're probably a different story than
okay,
most.
but as do
But-
some businesses, there's businesses that come to town regardless of, and it's just the cost of doing business.
And
Yeah.
I agree, but water isn't usually a consideration for the business. It's usually a consideration for the developer who's trying to put it all together, because it's a cost that they gotta carry. And obviously, if they can reduce that cost, they're happier, because that's money in their pocket. But,
I just, again, maybe we looked at 8 towns, and they all used this method, the
Mhm.
connection fee
Yep.
method, based on line size.
And I can understand that they're probably in a lot different position than we are too, all of those 8 towns, whereas their water departments are established and they have percentage-wise less new customers than existing, right? Whereas we are
So,
potentially,
who's responsible for what on these other towns? As far as ownership of that service pipe?
Most towns, like yours, you only own to the curbs, to the
Up to
corporation
what
stuff.
up to what size service? This is key, because you start getting into the bigger services, you own it, up to and including the connection at the main. That is the property owner's responsibility to maintain the leak, it's on them, so it's not part of our, none of that's been
No,
decided.
no.
So you're telling me we're gonna own a 12-inch service to an industrial park? That's gonna be ours? That's nuts.
what usually happens.
No,
But no, I'm,
they are.
okay, do we have that in writing, where the
No.
break point is between what we own and what the property owner owns? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I do. I'll have to look at our
Okay.
bylaws. I don't think that's spelled out.
It's not, I
What
guarantee
usually-
it.
What usually happens is, in a subdivision, if the subdivision, and even if it's an industrial subdivision, is the
Nope.
industrial, or the developer puts the infrastructure in according to all the rules, all the inspections are done by the city of the town, and then it gets turned over to the city and town. And then you then go from curb stops into the building, and then usually the owner
No.
of the property.
That's gone by the wayside. Start looking at what these towns are doing.
I can tell you, go right down to Oxford, Boulder Industrial Park.
Yep,
Soon as it comes in off Route 20, it's the developer's responsibility. If there's a break or something, what the town does is they come right there and they shut
Shut
the
the
water
valve.
off of Route 20. And they say, call
okay,
us,
that's how Oxford does it,
call us when it's back, when it's fixed,
yep.
okay?
They'll do the inspection and make sure it meets everything, and
Yep, and also, once you get inside, now, some parks, they'll go from using ductile iron to plastic or whatever they
Are
want.
they allowed to?
Well,
That's
that's
up to
inside,
municipality.
that's up to them,
Yes.
it's
Because
inside
private
their.
property,
Correct,
so it's not a subdivision. Okay.
no.
For instance, years ago, when, in Southbridge, I think it was AJ Lane, was doing a subdivision of homes. They were putting in the water pipe. Not only did they have to put the water pipe in, turn it over to Southbridge, but because they gifted Southbridge, Southbridge required them to pay the tax, the gift tax. As far as, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's just like National Grid and subdivision,
Yeah.
we do the same thing.
But that's different because the roadway was turned over to the town.
Right, again,
So it's-
my,
In
Example,
an industrial
exception.
park, it's not, the roadway does not necessarily get turned
not
over to the
necessarily,
town.
sometimes
So-
if it's big enough.
you can have, under the bylaws I'm used to, all right? You can have a Dunkin' Donuts as a 1-inch service. We'll take care of it from the main to the curb.
Mhm.
Right, it's it's not commercial, industrial, or residential. It's solely by size.
Based on size of service.
Once you get past 2 inch, doesn't matter. It's up to and including the connection to the main. That is all property owner's responsibility.
Wow.
Is it plus 2 inch or up to?
Up to 2 inch, we take care of to the
Okay,
curb stop.
Okay.
Anything above 2 inch is property owner's responsibility. So, I think defining some of this will be helpful in making a determination where you wanna go. That's why, if it helps, why I see things a little differently than what you guys are thinking, where every service, in a housing development, yeah, eventually the road's gonna be accepted and all infrastructure's gonna be accepted. I get that part. But in a commercial setting, it plays out a little differently, and start looking at what other towns are doing. It may drive that in a little different aspect.
So maybe instead of going round and round on this tonight, we need to table it again until the next meeting and give it more thought on
I don't disagree with you.
all of these, and with the added point of saying, definitely having something in our regulations
Right, cause
to be able to say,
regardless of
that's,
what was paid up at Treehouse, if you have the regulation to back it up, you can go shut the valve and go, well, you got a leak and you're wasting water and you can fix it.
yeah.
You know, I know it sounds cold and whatnot, but
Oh, no.
they'll
that's-
get somebody there pretty quick.
Absolutely.
And it's not it shouldn't be the town's responsibility to fix that.
And that lessens your thoughts on burden.
I might look.
That
on burden.
lessens your thoughts on burden.
Yeah.
So now, somebody comes along and does a 12-inch connection. Here's where it is in the street. We have the valve right there. After that valve, if something breaks, something happens. Sorry, we're shutting the valve off. Call us when it's fixed.
Yep.
So that lessens the cost burden down the road of potentially saying,
To the town.
yep, we've gotta provide for repair of infrastructure that private people are building today. We don't need to provide for that, because they're gonna fix it, or they're not gonna have water.
Well, it'll straighten the path out of where you wanna end up in 10 years, 20 years.
I so we're tabling this for the time being?
I'll put it on the next agenda.
Right, and I just,
Will you just let me know if there's any more information or different information you want me to present or
Okay.
bring for the next meeting?
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah. Moving on. So I have to re-present my disclosure for the Green Gold Group, because in order for it to be effective, it has to be signed by a commissioner, and there was no vote taken. So if the board's still okay with it, if someone could make a motion to approve the,
I'll make a motion, we accept the disclosure statement by Peter,
I'll
as
second it.
presented last meeting.
All those in favor?
aye,
Aye.
Aye.
thank you. So moving on to the consecutive water supply. To follow up on on what we had at our last discussion about the Abrahams Group and the water rate study that was presented. As I mentioned previously, I met with Matt Abrahams in the town of Southbridge about what we need to do to try and negotiate our base rate down for the town of Southbridge. And then also come up with, what our water rate would need to be for our customers to determine if we want to go consecutive, just so that we can be cost effective. There's a proposal attached from the Abrahams Group, which the first thing they're gonna do is they're gonna show Southbridge the cost savings that they will have, because they will no longer have to operate the distribution system, and, basically from the Route 169 pump station in Charlton out. The second thing they're gonna do is use the information from item above to help negotiate a lower fixed flat rate with the town of Southbridge. And then the third thing is they're gonna develop a rate structure based on that negotiated fixed flat rate that we're gonna have to charge our customers, so that we can prove to the DEP that we'll be financially feasible. So if the board has any desires to continue to move forward to possibly become consecutive, then I think this is the next step. If you think you have enough information already and you, I guess, don't think it's gonna work, then we can just stop here. But if you wanna truly know if we can negotiate with Southbridge and try and get that fixed rate down and justify to them why they can charge us less and still make the same amount, and then see then also determine what we're gonna have to charge our customers, and then make that decision, I think this is the next step. And this is the information and data you're gonna need to make that decision.
Mr. Chairman, looking back a few years ago, one of the things that was possibly being chased here was the connection fees that ExxonMobil is going to be paying in on the school loop, which totaled, it was ballpark, it was estimated to be $150,000. And for the longest time, I was saying to myself, boy, we don't want to lose that money. But as I continue to look at this, I don't know if, for me, if I can make a sound decision if we should be going forward with that at this time. For the simple reason is once we jump in the pool, there's no getting out. And I know it was stated to us we'd be fools for letting that $150,000 go by, but when you consider the responsibility and also all of the things that can go wrong, I think we need to wait for the system to get up and running and see how it is before we go forward and make a commitment. And with the Abrams, we're gonna be spending, is it $10,000, Peter?
Yep.
That's what they're looking for. And, because we've already had the study done from our side as far as what our estimated costs are.
The preliminary water rate study to see if we could see if and when we could be financially feasible to operate.
Correct.
And
correct.
unfortunately, it was a good start to get us information that we're not gonna get there right away.
Yeah, and very good, right, right. So, and the cost of operating that system was somewhere around a little over 300 grand, between 3 and 350, to operate if we were to become consecutive operators.
Yeah, yes, but that also included my salary.
Oh, yeah, the whole,
It was, yeah.
right, so around
I think-
350.
I think outside cost for an outside contract ops was around 120,000. And then the additional electricity for the pump station, water samples, testing and stuff like that would probably bring it up to around 200,000 to operate the system.
So when I talk about the 150, that's gonna get chewed up quick. And I realize that once we're operating, that we are, we're collecting the money, but the thing is,
Well, that 150, so not to interrupt, wouldn't be used to offset your operating costs. That would be used to get put away into your capital improvement fund.
it would be, but I see it, Peter, as that's your fund if in fact you have some real problems, to where we wouldn't go back to the taxpayers, we'd go and say, all right, we got some funds here, we need to use this in order to correct the problem, do some repairs or whatever. So, I'm not saying that, I'm just being cautious here, my opinion. Again, three other commissioners here who certainly could have a different opinion, and it's fine with me. But I think we're a little early on this. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, by the time it's up and running, we will have lost those connection fees to Southbridge.
The 150,
Yeah,
yeah. I'm trying to point out, in the big game, it's pebbles.
we don't know what Southbridge will go down to in terms of, giving us a discount. And without Abrams' proposal, we don't have anything to go back to substantiate our argument.
I don't know if, in fact, has anybody talked to the individual members of the council, what they feel? Is there
I
a
have
feeling
not.
on the council? I'm
I have
kinda
not.
going out of bounds here.
It's a
Maybe
little,
it seems
maybe
like
a
it's
little
out
bit.
of bounds, but it's, sometimes you can, if you get in an area, you can hold your finger up and figure out which way the wind's blowing. Because,
Again, in my discussions and in my experience, if you're looking to move forward to negotiate with the town of Southbridge, this is the next step to be taken. So you have true data that you can present to them to say, this is why we feel this is why it's justifiable. So they can answer to their constituents who say, why are you selling water to them cheaper and saving them money when we should be getting it?
that's exactly what some councilmen may say.
And that's why we need to give them, that's what I think the Abrahams study would do, is it would give us the data to show that that's
Right,
not the
right.
fact, and gives us, I'm not gonna say leverage, it just gives us the negotiating power to say, and to help prove our case. Without the data from the Abrahams group, it's very tough to negotiate based on what we have to say.
I believe Southbridge's quarterly fees are $40, is that what they are?
No,
They're
depends on line size. Quarterly fee for water,
Right.
$76 and change for
And
a,
of that, so much is water and so much is an administration fee.
no, that is their administration fee. And then on top of that goes
you
your
get-
actual usage.
Right, but I think you get 500 cubic feet of water with that.
No. 0 to 500 is their base tier, that's $3.30-something per 100 cubic feet, I believe.
I'll have to
They-
check, I've got bills at home, I'm pretty sure it includes the first, it's the administration fee and 500 cubic feet at a certain rate. Then once you go over that,
Could be.
then it bumps up,
I
you
don't.
go over that, it bumps up, and I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a councilman and say, you know, why do we wanna give up 8% of our volume? I think, are we about 8%, 10% of their volume,
Of their revenue.
of their revenue?
Based on the IMA payment, we're approximately
Yeah,
10% of their revenue.
You know, why would you if you're in business, why would you wanna give that up? If in
Because we're,
fact- if in
because
fact-
their cost to operate
Go down,
is
respect.
gonna go down, and they're gonna be able to make the same amount of money. They're
So
gonna, they're
lay
gonna be
people-
helped.
Are they gonna lay people off when?
RH White will,
Just move them to another operation.
especially with our system growing and the
but-
additional resources that are gonna be needed,
Isn't RH White under a contract with them? A
yes,
multi-year contract?
yes, just
So
like
why-
Veolia is with us.
All right, so their charges to the town of Southbridge aren't gonna change.
If they have additional staff I don't know what their agreement says, what their contract says, but if they have staff that they don't need because they're not operating Charlton anymore, then they will save that money, cause they won't have to keep that staff. And
RH
like,
White will save it, or the town of Southbridge will save it?
they both will,
Well,
Right.
they both will.
Yeah.
And they can move that person to a different community or a different area in their corporation.
As far as age of the system, I mean, Charlton, age of this, what, less 20 years?
Well,
we're in great shape.
I mean, you're not looking at potential of.
staff, the two.
No, I'm talking infrastructure.
The infrastructure to the MTAs was in the 80s, 85, 86,
so
so it's 30,
30.
35 years old.
No one knows what the life of ductile and.
No, it should be all ductile, it should all be in great
You're
shape.
talking many years to build up
The only,
enough bank to really worry about what's gonna, start paying for leaks and whatnot.
the only improvements that I think we would wanna make or start to focus on making with water is to install, gate valves, because when they did that initial installation to the service areas, they didn't install hydrants, they didn't install gate valves, cause it was sole purpose, not for anyone else to connect but the MTAs. So I think there's, again, looking forward and future investing, maybe do 2 or 3 gate valves a year to make sure that we can kinda shut off what we need to shut off in case something major happens in the future. But other than that, no, the system is new, it should be in good shape, it's all ductile. Because of the flow going through it, there shouldn't be much tuberculation, so, because
We've
of the.
come this far in the research, investigation, can we, it just seems pointless not to take it to this last kind of final step, if you will.
We do still have some grant money set aside that we could use to fund this study with. So,
The grant money
Well, I think regardless of if we, if we're early or not, potentially, I mean, you're still,
you're still gonna wanna know the information, right?
I guess it would be, but don't forget, is in order to get the final information, is we would have to go into a negotiations, and then you would get the final information, and that negotiation, I know if I was on the other side, I'd say, yeah, this is only good for 90 days, or 60 days, make a decision. After that, we'll start all over again.
But this will give us the number that we need to be at, will it not?
This
I-
will
you
give
know,
us, yes, it will
A
give us some number.
suggestion
It'll,
of a
yeah, so the
number
first
where
step,
we need to
again-
be at, and a number of a suggestion, or a suggestion of a number that they need to be at so that we can survive, basically. That's really what it comes down to, right? So we're paying for that. That's what we're paying for.
We're paying to see how much we can convince them they're gonna be saving by not, selling it to us. I don't think they care how much we need to survive.
Right.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
they
That-
need to know that number,
but-
because otherwise, if we can't, we just stay the way it is.
Well,
They
that's
wanna get
part of
rid
the
us,
argument,
so-
but I still think it's more important that we have to convince them that this is how much they're gonna be saving, therefore they should give us a, whatever it is, 20% discount or 30 or 10 or something like that.
So that's the
And
other side of the
convince
coin.
them that, yeah, that they're not gonna be losing money by,
And that's gonna be part of the study.
Yes, as far as figuring out what so a main part of the study is the Abrahams Group is gonna meet with Southbridge and talk about operational costs and determine what it costs for them to operate in the town of Charlton. And then if we go how we're proposed from the Route 169 pump station out with a master meter, how much savings the town of Southbridge is gonna save. And if they charge us the base rate, are they held harmless, or are they kept whole, or are they still making money so they feel comfortable negotiating that rate down? So. There's a lot of moving parts there that, again, I think we need someone like the Abrahams Group to put those numbers together and put it forward, so. It just gives us that negotiating, it gives us help negotiating our point of view.
Has Southbridge already agreed to cooperate with giving the information that Abrams is gonna be asking?
Again, this is exactly what we talked about at the last meeting between Southbridge, myself, and the Abrahams Group. So we've had that sit-down meeting, the three of us. I think if this is approved, Matt or Mark will meet with Southbridge separately, get the information they feel they need, meet with me or whoever else, and then get what we, take our information and then go to work and come up with a couple different scenarios. If Southbridge will come down to this amount, then we need to charge this amount. If Southbridge comes down further, then our rate structure can come down further, and just see what that sliding scale is and see where we end up. And then, once we get that information, then we have to go sit and negotiate with Southbridge and see how far we can get them to come down based on that information. And then from there, we back into what our rates are gonna be, and if we have to charge more than what the customers are currently paying. So, that's the only way I can see us moving forward with this, to really feel comfortable and make a strong case that, yes, we can make this financially feasible.
anybody care to make a motion to that effect? Talking a price not to exceed $10,000,
I believe you had a fixed price of $9,900
okay?
to do all the work.
Where's the price? Last page?
Last page.
9,900?
Make a motion, we approve the amount of $9,900 for the study by the Abrams Group.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Any more discussion on it?
Peter, in this contract, does the Abrams Group require additional information from us to where we would have to have another professional provide that to them?
I don't believe so. I believe they would work with me to get any information that we had to get them on our behalf.
Just to Rob's point, what if Southbridge said, I'm not gonna talk to you about
Sorry.
it? The question you just asked.
Yeah.
will
If we approve this, I would call Southbridge for, I'd let the Abrahams Group know and tell them not do anything until I confirm with Southbridge that they're still on board with this process moving forward.
Okay,
And the first step, I believe, would be for them to meet and go through this with Southbridge. So it's not like they would spend a lot of time doing anything else if Southbridge says, yeah, never mind, we're not interested in cooperating.
okay.
So I think the Abrahams Group meeting with Southbridge is step one. Much like we just did. I think that he left there with pretty much a good understanding of the information he needs from them to do the work that we're requesting. And, that would be first step. And then after he talks to them, second step would be for him to figure out what the true savings are based on their discussion. And then the third step is to figure out our rate structure based on, again, what we could possibly negotiate for our fixed flat rate for our water purchase.
Got a motion on the floor and a second, unless there's more discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
I,
Aye.
No.
Okay. So, I'll just move forward on that line of thought. Updates on the water line construction projects. Berry Corner Road, there's still no work taking place at all on Berry Corner Road. I believe there's the initial construction meeting of the season coming up the end of March. The school loop, Albanese Brothers plans on having one crew start on L. Stevens Road the week of March 18th. The exact date, they're not sure of. They will have a second crew that's gonna begin training through ExxonMobil for their safety protocols at that same time. At this time, DPW Superintendent Foskett doesn't want them to open up any other roads until after April 1st, which is what the road opening permit states. So, that's where we are with the school loop.
They did talk about March 15th at one time, didn't they?
They have, but I think Albanese keeps on pushing.
Because of the
With the
weather,
snow, I mean, we got that big snowstorm and there's still frost in the ground, so.
Yep.
And again, they're spoil piles for the trenches are all, frost, so they're not really ready to go yet anyways.
when will we become DPW?
When?
Yeah.
Couple weeks ago, last DPW superintendent. So.
Okay.
Route 169 pump station, the RH White plans on installing the propane tank at the pump station site, starting this week, and starting the SCADA panels, in the next couple weeks. There's a scheduled pump run test that's been changed from today to, Monday, March 11th to Monday, March 18th, I believe. It's up near Syracuse, New York, where the Gould Pumps is. Chris McClure is planning on attending that on our behalf to make sure the pump skid operates as designed.
I'm sorry, Peter, when is that gonna happen?
I believe it's March 18th.
What happened to the 5-week delay?
We found a panel.
There you go.
There's no delay.
Yeah, great.
Who's building the SCADA panels?
Wooded and Curran designed them.
Okay.
RH White's installing them. RH White has ITS as their electricians.
But the design is,
Is,
Wooded and
Wooded and Curran, yes.
thank you.
So as long as the pump test goes well, the pump skid is planned on being delivered to United Buildings the week of March 29th. And anticipated delivery of the building and the pump skid to the site is the week of April 19th. So,
Good.
yep, they found a replacement panel and that issue has been resolved. So as I said, the Bay Path and the Overlook pump stations, there was an initial meeting, pre-construction meeting today. The bid for both pump stations was awarded by Kleinfelder to Albanese Brothers, so they're gonna be doing that work as well. Very preliminary meeting today, just really getting people to meet each other. The biggest thing is that Kleinfelder's focusing on now is that Albanese Brothers get all their submittals in early and on time so that they're prepared for when they really wanna start the construction. They're not planning on doing any of that construction work until summertime. And because they still have to order the pump stations aren't ordered, they are designed, but they haven't been ordered yet, that's up to Albanese Brothers. So their plan is that those won't be ready to go or get delivered until the end of the summer, and they don't wanna do they don't wanna do much of that site work until they're ready to take delivery of the pump stations. So the scheduling of that is still kinda up in the air right now, and, as I know more, I'll relay the information.
So, I'm sorry, but they're planning on August, September, turning that on?
No, so the bid was awarded, I believe, February, so say February
Yeah.
16th, and it has a 1-year time on it. So it has to be turned on by February of 2020.
It's a key to our system, as far as great water. It's starting to come.
Yep.
Yeah.
So again, unfortunately, there's a lot of other priorities in what they have going on, because when the school is closed that same time of the year, they have to get onto Mugget Hill Road to try and get all that water line and service connections installed while there's no school. So I think there's quite a few moving parts to that. I think we can ask them to prioritize the Overlook Pump Station over the rest of it, because we can currently feed it from North Main Street. The Bay Path Pump Station can kinda have to wait a little bit, because that can't get fed until the entire loop is done anyways.
Right.
So I think, to your point, we can talk to them about prioritizing the timing on the Overlook Pump Station and installing that water line on their property, possibly. But I don't, today really wasn't the day, it was really preliminary, there was no schedules truly discussed. But, hopefully we can make that happen. And moving on to the Boffinville Public Water Supply, Peter Newton and I met with DEP on Wednesday, March 6th, to talk about the proposal that you approved at your last meeting. They're on board with that train of thought, and Muriel Stone confirmed that the scope that we're changing to is still funded under the Water Master Plan grant, so that shouldn't be a problem in getting reimbursed for that work. So, Peter is planning on has the driller scheduled to begin work the week of March 18th. That way they can get out there. I think he's planning on 8 days of drilling, and we can compile that data and try and get that to you sooner than later, so we can make some decisions on the properties.
If I may, Peter, just turn the clock back a little bit. The Abrams $10,000 or $9,999, you mentioned it's possible that could be coming from grant money?
Yes.
And what grant money would that be?
You have 3 grants. You have the $200,000 Water Master Plan grant that gets reimbursed from the state as we spend it.
Yep.
So anything we're doing at Buffinville, any attorney's fees to do at Buffinville, we'll submit those, and those get reimbursed from the state, from that
We've
grant.
already used most of that money up, haven't we?
No,
Or put it into it?
no, when we asked for an extension, last summer, when we rolled into FY19,
Yeah,
they granted the extension and granted us a fresh $200,000.
all right. So where do you recommend we take it from?
I would recommend you take it from, you still have 2 other grants. You had a $20,000 grant and a $30,000 grant that still have funds. I'd recommend you, and those grants were the funds were just given and are set aside for us to spend. I'd recommend you take it from one of those, which is where you took the water rate study money from.
I thought we voted that one of those grants was to go and determine what it would take to bring water to the eastern portion of Route 20. I could be mistaken on that, but I thought that's what we had decided. One was gonna go for the Southbridge connection, and the other was gonna go for coming up with a plan for the east, what we would do there. Maybe in the minutes if Sue doesn't mind looking back, but because aren't those gonna go away real soon?
What?
the 30 and the 20?
No, those funds were dispersed years ago, and they're just sitting in an
Oh,
account.
we have them, we have control.
We
of
have
those.
them, yes.
Okay, good.
So you got a $2.6 million grant to install the water line into Oxford.
Right, yeah, but
I'm just saying, that's there. But I don't recall anywhere, or in any past discussions, where any of those other two grants were earmarked for that reason. But yeah, it could happen before I came on.
Okay.
So, I believe that's it, unless there's any other questions.
Sunset.
Sunset. I was told to stop calling.
This,
make a motion, we adjourn.
No,
Where are we going?
executive session. It'll be quick, please.
Promise?
If you had read the agenda, you would have, you wouldn't
I
be
did,
so
I-
long-winded about the goddamn budget.
I thought he just automatically puts that in every single week.
No, that's illegal, you can't do that.
well,
Well,
throw that on our next agenda.
will do?
What's that?
Um, Yeah, 17A.
He's supposed to follow up in April.
I was asked to follow up in April when she wasn't as busy.
We heard that about last year being
I
after the first of the year, so,
understood.
I mean,
I'll put it on the next agenda.
just be reasonable.
I will relay the information to her that it's on there and see if she wants to attend.
Ready? Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, we go into executive session under Massachusetts General Law, C-30A, Section 21, A, number 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate. If the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body.
The chair so declares.
Womansky, aye.
Was there a
Wait a
second?
minute.
Second.
Wait a minute, we're gonna come out of the executive session solely for the purpose of adjournment, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
So all those, we're gonna get a motion, do we have a second on that?
Second.
Okay,
Mackenzie, aye.
Womansky, aye.
Gagner, aye?
Jennings, aye.
All right.